In a world strictly stratified by magical abilities, a sweet girl lived a peaceful life with her father in a remote countryside village. As she grew, she gradually awakened memories of her past life, accepting her fate as an ordinary person and yearning for a tranquil life with her father. However, when crisis struck, she discovered her father was actually a duke in hiding and the most powerful swordsman. Follow the captivating journey of this father-daughter duo as they ignite a rebellion, overthrowing the king's tyrannical and discriminatory rule. The story begins with the image of a baby girl with beautiful, silvery white hair and ocean-colored eyes. The child lay in a comfortable cradle, waving her tiny hands at the man before her. Gently holding the child in his arms, the man, who shared the exact same hair color as the child, thought to himself, "She's like a little angel." He was Enoch Rubinstein, and this was his thought the first time he saw this child who looked exactly like him. The child seemed to be close to him, appearing comfortable in Rubinstein's embrace. The man was completely captivated by the child's adorable appearance. He wondered, could she possibly recognize me as her father? It was an irresistible attraction. Perhaps it was the sacred bond of blood. Perhaps it was love. As his fingers were grasped by the child's small hand, Rubinstein felt a warmth more real than ever before. A faint smile flickered across his cold face, and his gaze towards the child softened. Enoch couldn't understand why he felt this way. Like other ability users in the Empire, this child's birth was purely for the continuation of the family line, like a horse bred for mating. He thought he wouldn't feel anything, wouldn't have any emotional fluctuations. This creature was supposed to be just a small thing that shared his bloodline, a child destined to grow up to be an ability user, a noble, and eventually a soldier, a hound of the royal family. Thinking about his own experiences and the fate of children in this world, Enoch's face darkened, and a sense of dread washed over him, forcing him to make a significant decision. No, I can't let her live like me. Enoch leaned down, touching his daughter's soft, small face. Then, that night, when the dark of night became the perfect cover for a clandestine operation, a figure cloaked in mysterious black left the base. Amidst the ruins and smoke-filled battlefield, holding the child tightly, Enoch whispered to his daughter, "You know, I can't let you live this life of bloody battlefields, my daughter." So he decided to escape this place with her, knowing the distant future would be filled with the hardships of a hidden identity. Just then, another figure appeared behind him, and a familiar voice startled Enoch. "Are you running away?" And with the child. The woman who had just appeared and posed a question was Selena, 20 years old, the child's mother. Selena sternly asked Enoch, "What are you thinking?" Enoch remained silent for a long time, then held his daughter tighter than ever. He replied in a soft voice, saying that he didn't want to raise her the way he was raised. Selena wasn't surprised by this answer. She sighed, saying, "She's my child too." Yes, this was their biological child, but her birth was more like the fulfillment of an obligation rather than the crystallization of some vague love. After a moment of contemplation, Enoch suddenly suggested, "Then let's leave together." This proposal shocked Selena, and she seemed unable to believe these words came from the man before her. After a moment, Selena let out a sarcastic, bitter laugh. "Ha! I didn't expect you to be so reckless. We were born destined to die," she said, approaching Enoch and his child. As an ability user and noble of the Empire, this child was no exception. Looking at the beautiful face before him, Enoch was momentarily speechless, for she spoke the brutal truth. Meanwhile, Selena's voice continued, "Even so, I understand your feelings. Having a daughter does make us think differently." Thinking Selena had come to stop him, Enoch gritted his teeth, determined not to give up. But Selena's next words shocked him. Turning her back, she said, "Let's go." He stared at her back in astonishment, not expecting Selena to compromise and allow them to leave. The 1,000 words in Enoch's heart eventually turned into one last sentence before parting. "I plan to head to Xenon, but I'm not sure if we'll stay there permanently." From a barely perceptible angle, a gentle yet sorrowful expression appeared on Selena's cold face, and she whispered, "All right, good luck." And so, on that day, Enoch Rubinstein, the Empire's only swordsman, vanished without a trace. This was the story of 7 years ago. 7 years later, time had easily erased everything, causing the name Enoch Rubinstein to gradually sink into oblivion. In a small, dainty house in a peaceful countryside village, a dark-haired man entered a room and called out gently, "Good morning, my princess. Time to wake up." A beautiful little girl with silvery white hair lay in bed, raising her hand to rub her eyes and whined, 5 more minutes. Her coquettish manner was utterly adorable, but she was eventually woken up by her father. You have to get up. It's time to brush your teeth and have breakfast. The man in the cute, jelly, fruit-patterned apron, holding cooking utensils, was James Brown, a super stay-at-home dad. Holding the still sleepy child, the little girl insisted she wasn't hungry, but Brown coaxed her with a smile. Come on, I made your favorite scrambled eggs. They're especially delicious, just for you. Hearing this, the sleepy-eyed girl took a deep breath, sniffing the aroma wafting from the small kitchen. Then she immediately changed her attitude, shaking her head. It's not just chicken and eggs. I also smell broccoli. Brown was surprised that her nose was so sensitive. I said I don't like broccoli. I can't believe it. Faced with his daughter's tantrum, James had to continue coaxing her. My princess Lilith, just eat 2 pieces of broccoli today. Okay, if you eat it, your afternoon snack will be chocolate and applesauce macarons. Thinking of the delicious macarons her father made, Lilith's mouth started to water, and she questioned, are you trying to bribe me with chocolate and applesauce? Macarons, you think I'll fall for that? She retorted indignantly, but eventually succumbed to her cravings. Fine, just 2 pieces of broccoli. Observing his daughter's rapidly changing expression, James couldn't help but feel speechless. Well, it seems she's the type to fall into that kind of trap. Held in her father's arms, Lilith thought, 2 pieces of broccoli is nothing. Then her gentle father planted a good morning kiss on her soft, white cheek. Who's daddy's sweet little angel? The girl's name was Lilith Brown, and she was 7 years old, a child with a rather special secret. As she grew, she gradually recalled memories of her past life. Currently, Lilith was enjoying peaceful and happy days with her father, James, who was a very good father and an excellent cook. 7-year-old Lilith Brown started recalling memories of her past life around the age of 3, and now, at 7, she remembered everything completely. It all felt like a surreal, yet strangely realistic dream, including the fact that this world belonged to a fantasy novel she had read in her past life. In her past life, she was a graduate student. Why aren't graduate students human? Honestly, that kind of life isn't fit for humans. So in the prime of her life at 25, Lilith died from overwork while staying up all night writing her thesis. Her thesis topic was a study on the essence of social reform in speculative and fantasy novels, the Das Rebellion. She was so stressed about that thesis that she even reincarnated into the world of the novel before all her past life memories returned. Lilith was no different from ordinary children. Even now, after remembering everything, her past life remained hazy unless she deliberately tried to recall it. Subconsciously, Lilith found herself fully integrated into her current life. So despite being able to think like an adult, her childish aversion to broccoli remained unchanged. While Lilith was still sulking about the 2 pieces of broccoli, James, combing her hair, asked, what hairstyle do you want today, bunny ears or princess style? Lilith sighed. Dad, I'll tie my hair myself. Just a ponytail. After styling her hair, James placed his hand on her shoulder and said softly, all right, princess, I'm going to market today, so please go play at the neighbor's house. I'll tell Aunt Susan. Hearing this, Lilith asked, why can't I go with you? James shook his head and stood up. Not now. There are scary soldiers wandering around outside recently. Listening to his explanation, Lilith became even more curious, as these things had nothing to do with a child like her. A child without any abilities, not even the slightest ability like manipulating shards of glass. But in the face of her reasoning, James remained firm. It's still not safe. It's dangerous. In fact, with the memories of her past life, Lilith clearly understood that the scary soldiers her father spoke of were elite soldiers from the Imperial Royal Army. They had come to this rural area, hundreds of miles from the capital, to search for ability users. In the world of the Das Rebellion, where Lilith had been reborn, people were divided into 2 groups. Those who could use magic, also known as ability users, and those who couldn't, known as the abilityless. Ability users could hold noble titles and receive preferential treatment. However, this world also had a hierarchical pyramid, and individuals were discriminated against based on their abilities. Wars occurred frequently, and ability users were often sent to conflict zones. In this story, even the protagonist was brutally killed. Ordinary people, or the abilityless, couldn't even become supporting characters in this novel. Lilith concluded that she and her father were such people, ordinary brown hair and eyes. Even the name was incredibly ordinary, James Brown. Clearly, he was an ordinary, superfluous, passive character. While eating her broccoli, Lilith suddenly said, "But I quite like it. Being born ordinary is a great blessing, isn't it?" Hearing her words, James became puzzled, and he asked, "What do you mean, dear?" Lilith simply replied with a bright smile, "This world is scary. I like living a simple and happy life with you. Just the two of us. I'm happy." Her thoughts made James silent for a moment. After a while, he reached out and ruffled her hair, smiling. "Yes, as long as I have my princess, I'm happy too." After leaving his daughter at their neighbor Susan's house, James, carrying a bundle of firewood, waved goodbye. "Please take good care of Lilith today. Princess, I'll be back soon." Sitting at the neighbor's house, the orange-haired husband placed a pile of acorns on the table while recounting the story of Lilith's father. "At first, I didn't even know he was your father. A young man suddenly came to the village in the mountains, living quietly, not talking to anyone, as if carrying some unknown story. There are many people with such stories in this world." Susan, the neighbor's wife, continued, "Then one night, your father came looking pale, holding a newborn baby in his arms. That baby was you, Lilith. It was a moonlit night, and the young man named James had completely lost his usual composure. His indifferent demeanor had become anxious and flustered. He hurriedly told the neighbors, 'I'm sure she's not sick, but she refuses to eat. She must be hungry, but every time I try to feed her, she just screams and cries.' Faced with this situation, the neighbor decided to check on the child. 'Let me see.' After taking Lilith from her father's arms, she realized the problem. 'Oh, I see. The poor little thing is suffering. Coming quickly.' Moments later, inside the house, Susan brought out a bowl of fragrant liquid food. She explained that it was baby food. She had mashed some apples and bananas and mixed them with baby formula. She can eat it now. Following the neighbor's instructions, the very nervous and serious James slowly fed the baby a spoonful of the food. At first, Lilith seemed a little hesitant, but after tasting it, she immediately began to eat with relish, looking very happy. It wasn't a big problem. Although she was over 5 months old, she had only been drinking pre-mixed formula. Perhaps tired of this food, she had endured hunger and expressed it in her own way. The neighbor continued, her laughter ringing out. After that, he became so friendly. Every time my husband and I appeared in the distance, he would run out to greet us. He often gave us a lot of chopped firewood. He must have been very confused, as it was his first time raising a baby. So after that day, he was always asking and learning more about things he needed help with." Listening to the neighbor recount these stories about her father, Lilith couldn't help but exclaim internally, "He just became a house husband like that." Suddenly, the neighbor looked at the cards in his hand and laughed. "Ha, I won this time, little one. Checkmate. Ha," he said, placing his cards on the table and happily gathering all the acorns. However, Lilith's small hand stopped him, accompanied by her voice. "Wait a minute, he caught you." With a smile, the adorable child gently revealed all her cards. Lilith triumphantly won all the acorns, looking smug. "Let's play again tomorrow. I always welcome a challenge." Having spent a pleasant day at the neighbor's house, Lilith decided to say goodbye and go home as evening was approaching. "Thank you, Auntie and Uncle. I had a lot of fun today." Holding a basket of laundry, she said to her neighbor, "Andy, you should go back. I'll do the laundry." Susan was surprised. "What? Why are you doing the laundry? Just leave it." Faced with her aunt's puzzled expression, the little girl cheerfully explained, "I'll do it so Dad won't have to do it himself after he comes back from the market." The child's filial piety and adorable appearance deeply moved the neighbor. "Oh dear, what an angelic child with a heart of gold. Then let me just finish it before I leave. These are the clothes that need washing right." The neighbor wanted to help Lilith finish the laundry, but the little girl darted aside and shook her head. No, Dad's underwear is in there too." Hearing this, the neighbor blushed and gave up, letting the little girl do the laundry herself. "Oh my goodness." Carrying the laundry basket, the little girl's small feet walked step by step along the grassy path. In truth, her father didn't like her secretly doing the laundry, but Lilith was determined to continue doing it. In her past life, she was an orphan, and the only memory she had of a benevolent guardian was her current father. Despite his young age, he took care of her himself, changing diapers, feeding, bathing her, and everything else day after day. Her father had been by her side since she was very young, forming a bond between them that meant a lot to Lilith. Lilith told herself she would work hard to grow up quickly and repay her father with filial piety. Immersing the clothes in the cool stream, Lilith sighed softly. "The life of an ordinary person is so peaceful. I wish every day could be like this." However, in this world, ability-less people like her weren't even considered human. Life is a little poor, but compared to my past life, nothing can compare to this. When a better world is established, I'll simply enjoy the good life. Reincarnation is truly wonderful. As a little girl was lost in her thoughts and finished washing the clothes, the sudden sound of horse hooves behind her startled her. There are horses in the village. Turning around, Lilith saw countless figures on horseback approaching, their gazes cold, casting shadows across her small face. The surrounding air became strangely oppressive and silent. On the horsemen's clothes, Lilith saw the Imperial insignia, recognizing them as the Imperial army. Blue cloaks? Are they the Empire's dusk paladins? As she stared in surprise, the man at the front looked down at her. He had vibrant purple eyes and jet black hair. Suddenly, he issued a command that shocked Lilith to her core. "Seize her. It's the Empire's DOS paladin." The paladin looked at her again and then ordered his subordinates to seize her. Lilith was utterly shocked and confused by their actions. Although she tried to resist, her small body was no match for them. The knights touched her lightly with a glowing stick, causing Lilith to feel a sharp pain and cry out, "Ah, it hurts." Seeing this, the paladin muttered, reporting, "She's an ability user." It seems she really is Enoch Rubinstein's daughter. Lilith was stunned by their assessment. "I'm an ability user. Is there some kind of misunderstanding?" But the lead knight confirmed it, saying it was obvious just by looking at her. The girl struggled. "Please let me go." But the knight held her firmly, coldly asking, "Where is Enoch Rubinstein?" The unfamiliar name made Lilith answer unconsciously, "Who's that?" But a second later she froze, repeating the name Enoch Rubinstein in her mind. Why was this name appearing now? Lilith was surprised to remember it was a name from the novel DOS Rebellion. He was the commander of the DOS Paladins, the strongest military force in the story. A DOS Paladin, a swordsman, a duke, the strongest character in the story. In his younger days, due to the royal family, he lost his young daughter, and one day, he sharpened his sword, preparing for revenge. At that time, he adopted another protagonist, Chester, as a son. Enoch Rubinstein was one of the two main characters. So, this knight was looking for Enoch Rubinstein and his daughter. Based on this information, this seemed to be an event before the original story began, meaning Enoch Rubinstein's daughter should still be alive, right? But Lilith wondered, what does this have to do with me? Whatever. She stopped struggling and turned to speak seriously to the knight. "Hey, wait a minute. You're making a huge mistake. First, I'm dizzy. All the blood's rushing to my head. Can you put me down?" As she spoke, she employed her dramatic acting skills, leaving the knight bewildered. But this gave Lilith a chance to carefully observe his face. A black-haired knight with purple-blue eyes. There seemed to be a character who looked like this, but who was it? Lilith couldn't immediately recall, but she also realized her precarious situation, so she put those vague thoughts aside. Sitting steadily on the horseback, Lilith asked the knight, "You're talking about Enoch Rubinstein, the one who's a duke, a paladin, and a swordsman all at once, right? Silver hair, blue eyes." Although the child's tone was strange, the knight nodded slightly in confirmation. Hearing this, Lilith pointed at herself and said loudly, "I might look like that person because of my silver hair and blue eyes, but my dad's name is James Brown, not some Enoch. Dad said my hair and eyes are like my mom's, who left home a long time ago." Such a clear explanation from a small child was indeed surprising. The black-haired knight paused, unable to help but praise her. "You're well-educated, child." While Lilith was still unsure what would happen next, a very familiar voice called out her name. "Lilith." The voice was filled with panic and shock. The girl quickly turned to the side and, seeing the approaching figure, called out excitedly, "Dad." Seeing his daughter captured, the usually quiet James, holding a stick as if it were a sharp sword, yelled, "What are you doing? Put my daughter down if you don't want to die." Her father's aggressive attitude made Lilith tremble. She panicked internally. "Dad, are you crazy? Don't you know who these people are? Disrespecting high-ranking nobles is punishable by immediate execution, and you're threatening to kill them. Oh God, my dad's lost it." Thinking this, the girl clasped her hands together, trembling as she tried to appease the knights. "I'm sorry, my dad can't live without me. I think he's just temporarily lost his mind. I'll be eternally grateful if you can forgive him. No matter how you look at it, he's just an ordinary citizen of the Empire. He's a 27-year-old single father, living in a mountain village, making a living by gathering wood and hunting with his daughter. Lilith hurriedly explained the situation, but the knight's eyes were fixed on her father. Suddenly, the black-haired knight tossed Lilith to a subordinate. He then walked towards Lilith's father, causing the girl to scream in terror. Please don't do anything to my dad." As he approached, the black-haired knight suddenly smiled and said, "It seems those things weren't true." Facing him, James held the stick like a sharp sword, coldly questioning, "Why are you here?" "Let my daughter go." Hearing this, the knight replied gravely, "Enoch Rubinstein, the Emperor requests your immediate return to the army to fulfill your duties." Lilith continued to try and explain, utterly bewildered by the situation. No, I told you, my dad's name isn't some Enoch." But despite her cries, the black-haired knight continued, his words causing James to freeze. "It's been 7 years. It's time to stop all of this. You know better than anyone that, according to military law, deserters are subject to immediate execution. Until their whereabouts are confirmed, they are considered fugitives and classified as Class A criminals. However, the wise Emperor respects your past contributions and your abilities. Despite your violation of military law, no arrest warrant has been issued for you. Your title and assets have not been confiscated either." Lilith listened to the knight's words in a daze. Wait a minute, why am I completely lost about what he's saying? Along with the confusion in her heart, the voice continued, "Until now, all your illegal acts have been overlooked, and we have been waiting for you. It's time to return. Defying the Emperor's orders means courting death." I relay the Emperor's words once again. Standing opposite Lilith's father, the knight's eyes became enigmatic, tinged with a faint purple glow, as he emphasized, "Enoch Rubinstein, return to the army and fulfill your duties, starting today." Listening silently for a moment, a sardonic smile crept onto James's impassive face. The Emperor's words are still as flowery as ever, then as now. Her father's words immediately made Lilith nearly wet herself in terror. What? Whose words? The Emperor's. Oh my God, mocking a noble and insulting the Imperial family. "Dad, you've really gone too far." Not understanding his daughter's apprehension, James continued, "Shouldn't the Emperor be a bit more honest? He just wants the doghouse empty, waiting for his dog to return, right?" This wasn't good, Lilith thought. She needed to stop her father, to escape before things got any worse. She promptly bit the hand of the knight holding her. He reflexively released her from the pain, causing her to tumble to the ground. Under her father's gaze, Lilith scrambled towards him. But before she could get far, another hand grabbed her. James yelled furiously, "Damn it, let her go." Lilith tried to calm him, simultaneously admonishing him, "Oh wait, Dad, please be quiet." Then she turned and apologized awkwardly to the knight. I'm sorry, mister. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Please spare my father's life." Tears streamed down Lilith's face. She thought sadly, why does that Enoch look so much like me? Sobbing, she pleaded with the knight, "Actually, I know about this Enoch guy. I'll find out everything. I'm sure he's hiding somewhere. I'll even help you find him. So please spare my dad's life, just this once. I'll go with you. I'll go, please." Just then, as if sensing something, the knight's face suddenly changed. He swiftly turned, still holding Lilith, and looked towards her father. James instinctively, and Lilith dazedly, looked at her father as well. But even more surprising, a strange energy was steadily emanating from his body. Lilith asked herself in a daze, "What is that?" Her eyes widened in shock as she saw her father's appearance gradually changing. Light enveloped his body, his dark brown hair slowly turning silver white. In an instant, he transformed into a strikingly handsome man with silver white hair and deep blue eyes. Witnessing this, Lilith's heart seemed to stop. That 27-year-old single father, James, who raised me alone in the mountain village. Could that really be him? That 27-year-old single father, James, who raised me alone in the mountain village. Could that really be him? The black-haired knight handed Lilith over to a guard behind him once more, instructing, "Ensure the child's safety. Step back and wait for me." This was the same knight who had been following orders. This individual only diligently performed his duties under the black-haired knight's command. Before Lilith could react or think further, a tremendous energy erupted before her. That powerful force and sword strike easily forced the black-haired knight back. Enoch Rubinstein spoke coldly, defying orders is death. He must have thought this a laughable joke. How do you plan to control me? Enoch asked, wielding the ancient weapon in his hand, creating sharp sword marks. The black-haired knight could only barely defend himself. At this moment, Enoch Rubinstein roared, "You dare touch my daughter." His overwhelming aura and powerful killing intent made the black-haired knight grit his teeth and endure, a small cut even appearing on his face from the previous sword energy. At this critical juncture, the knight holding Lilith pressed his sword against her neck and threatened, "Stop. Enoch Rubinstein, surrender obediently and come with us, and your daughter's life will be spared." Seeing this, Enoch ceased his attack. Panicked and anxious, he called out to his daughter, then looked at the knights with disgust. "You threaten me with my child. How laughable for paladins." Hearing this, the black-haired knight slowly bent down and picked up his sword, saying, "We are merely carrying out the Emperor's orders." His Majesty commanded that Enoch Rubinstein be brought back at all costs. Hearing that familiar name again, Enoch shook his head coldly. "I've abandoned that name. I have no intention of living under the rule of the royal family. Tell your master that." The black-haired knight's face darkened, and he roared, "I'm not giving you a choice. This is an order." His sharp sword moved closer to Enoch's neck. The rage and frustration in Enoch's heart ignited and exploded, energy surging through his arms. But it was all stopped by the threat from the knight behind him. "If you want your daughter safe, stop now." The chaotic situation and oppressive atmosphere infuriated Lilith, and she shouted, "All right, wait, hold on. Let's summarize the situation. My father, who I thought was an insignificant character, is actually the hidden protagonist, Enoch Rubinstein. So, I'm part of his story. In other words, according to the original story, he lost his daughter because of the royal family, and then plotted revenge. And in this world, he's taking care of that daughter. Is that right?" Everything was clear. Now that she knew the plot, Lilith had only one choice. Under everyone's puzzled gazes, she suddenly looked up and smiled, clapping her hands. "Of course, if it's the Emperor's order, we should obey. Dad will return to the knighthood today, right?" Her sudden change in attitude stunned everyone around her. Later, in their home, Lilith threw a tantrum on the floor. "I look like my mom. I resemble her. Why didn't you tell me? Why? Why?" Enoch sat neatly in front of his daughter and apologized. "I'm sorry, my little princess. I'm truly sorry. Even with 10 mouths, I would have nothing to say. But my daughter," he paused, then suddenly smiled triumphantly. "Who do you take after be so clever, thinking so quickly in that situation? Thanks to my princess, we've bought some time. They're so stupid, actually thinking I go back once they release the hostage. As long as my princess is safe, I fear nothing. Now hurry up and pack your things. Let's escape." He packed his luggage excitedly, while Lilith remained silent, thinking, wait, did this really happen? No matter how you look at it, he just seems like a foolish villager. The only reason he seemed scary was probably because they threatened to hurt me. With this thought, Lilith said she wanted to talk to her father. She spoke seriously, "Don't run away. Let's go back to the Empire together. Dad, please return to the knighthood." Enoch was shocked by the suggestion. Lilith looked straight at her father and continued, "I want to live with pride. I want to go to the capital with you, and I'll enroll in the Ability Training Academy and get my Ability User badge. After all, I'm an Ability User too." Completely stunned by his daughter's clear words, Enoch asked gravely, "What are you talking about? How do you know about the academy and these things?" Lilith stammered that her neighbor had told her, but Enoch was shocked. Why would the neighbor know about these things? And why would he tell a child? What was he thinking telling you this? What was he thinking telling you this? Despite the lingering questions and confusion in his heart, Enoch's expression softened. He silently studied his daughter, then placed his hands on her small shoulders. "Lilith, listen carefully to what I have to say. In truth, I always knew this day would come. Frightening people like those outside, they would eventually come looking for us. Even though I knew this early on, I still decided to run away 7 years ago because I truly didn't want you to grow up as an ability user. The life of an ability user or a noble might seem glamorous, but what outsiders see isn't the whole truth. In the Pavilion Empire, ability users are considered royal nobles. According to their rank and expertise, they're granted titles, vast lands, and countless gold coins, with the authority to command obedience. But these glittering privileges always come with undeniable obligations. They must become the Empire's sword, shield, and scepter. They must sacrifice their lives to serve the Royal Elite Federation. In a nation that conquers and hunts monsters daily, the Elite Federation is constantly sent to the battlefield, no different from glorified war slaves. Ability users are both nobles and warriors. Soldiers and mages spend almost their entire lives on the battlefield, and the battlefield is a terrifying place. My daughter, the friend I greeted just yesterday, was dead and brought back today. As I buried him with my own hands, I wondered who would die tomorrow and how much longer I could survive. Lilith, I was truly afraid. I didn't want you to live a life like mine, a life where you face death every day. Life and death have become so commonplace that we become numb to it. Lilith, the day I first saw you 7 years ago, when you were just born, you became my whole world, a warm ray of sunshine in this cold life. I couldn't bear the thought of losing you. His voice choked up as he hugged his little daughter tightly. Lilith gently patted her poor father's back. She told herself, "Father, I understand you more than anyone, and I also want to fulfill your wishes. But if you don't go back, this country will collapse." Yes, Enoch Rubinstein absolutely could not remain in this village. In principle, he should return to the knighthood to avenge his daughter, adopt the male protagonist. Chester planned to embezzle $9 billion from within the knighthood and start a rebellion in this country. Because in about 10 years, all ordinary people would die. Recalling the unfolding events, Lilith couldn't help but feel a chill run down her spine. The royal family carried out a mass genocide of those without abilities, a true genocide against those without magic. The only person who could stop all of this was her father. But if she ran away with him now, then he wouldn't adopt the male protagonist, Chester, and, of course, wouldn't be able to launch the rebellion against the royal family. Then everything would crumble, and innocent civilians would die. Yes, because she knew everything, Lilith couldn't live like this forever. She couldn't hide and watch this country collapse. Countless small lives plunged into misery. The little girl made up her mind and looked up at her father. "Dad, do you want me to live a life on the run?" Enoch weakly shook his head, troubled. "It's not like that. But you said you wanted to live a simple life with me, just the two of us." Lilith pouted and turned her head. "Well, I've changed my mind." Her attitude puzzled Enoch, who had to ask, "What do you mean?" The little girl widened her adorable eyes and spoke clearly. "Ability users are nobles, right? And I'm your daughter, so I'm the most powerful noble, right? I can eat macarons every day and wear dresses and ribbons, right?" Lilith used her adorable, coquettish charm and sparkling, hopeful eyes to persuade her father. If everything went according to the original story, she thought she should use her memories from her past life to accelerate her development and meet the male protagonist, Chester, earlier. She had to ensure the rebellion succeeded. Lilith told her father, "I want to be a noble. I want to be a real princess. We'll go back, and you won't have to work so hard chopping wood and selling it at the market anymore. I won't have to wait for you to come home all day, and I won't have to do laundry anymore either." Enoch retorted, "I told you that you didn't need to do the laundry, but you insisted on doing it anyway." Suddenly, Lilith stood up abruptly. The little girl realized that acting cute wasn't very effective, so she decided to change her tactics. She silently apologized to her father in her heart. She didn't really want to do this, but she had no other choice. Lilith cried out angrily, "Why didn't you tell me? Why?" Enoch was clearly taken aback by his daughter's outburst. "Why didn't you want me to live as an ability user? What if I want to live as an ability user? As a noble? You didn't even ask for my opinion. You just made the decision yourself." As she spoke, the little girl began to sob. Sure enough, now worried, Enoch hurriedly tried to soothe her. "Oh, my princess." But Lilith resolutely dodged his embrace. "I don't want only you to call me that. I really want to be a princess. I'm not your daughter." Hearing these words, Enoch's eyes widened as if struck by lightning, and he cried out in alarm. "What did you just say?" Lilith, crying, pointed towards the vast world outside. "I'm not James's daughter. I will become Duke Enoch's daughter. If you don't want to go, I'll ask those uncles outside to take me." Her forceful words left Enoch completely speechless. Ultimately, faced with his boundless love and heartache for his daughter, he had to compromise and give in. Sitting in the carriage, looking back at their house, Lilith sighed softly. "My dear house, the place filled with childhood memories. I never thought I'd leave like this." Now she could confirm that her ordinary village life had indeed ended, drawing a perfect full stop. What lay ahead was the distant future. A cruel world awaited Lilith from now on. The carriage rode smoothly along the village road, and little Lilith dozed against her father's strong arm. Suddenly, the carriage jerked to a halt, causing her to lurch forward, but thankfully, Enoch caught her in time. "Lilith, are you all right?" The little girl shook her head, saying she was fine, then looked curiously out the window. "Dad, what's that?" At this moment, the black-haired knight pulled on the reins and approached the window. He observed for a moment, then said, "Those are werewolves." Enoch exclaimed in surprise, "Are you kidding me? Werewolves? A pack of ferocious monsters, their bodies massive like giant bears." The black-haired knight dismounted, preparing for battle. He said he knew their habitat was nearby, but he didn't expect them to come down to the village. He told Lilith and her father to wait in the carriage. He would deal with them in return. In this dangerous situation, Enoch opened the carriage door and instructed his daughter, "Stay here, don't move. No matter what happens, don't come out, and absolutely do not stick your head out." "Wait, where are you going, Dad?" Meanwhile, Enoch walked over to the black-haired knight and took his sword, stating, "Protect the carriage. If my daughter gets a single scratch, you're dead." The bewildered knight wondered if Enoch intended to deal with them himself, which was clearly unnecessary. But Enoch walked forward, sword in hand, muttering in disgust, "How long do you expect me to wait, watching you deal with each werewolf one by one?" With that, Enoch faced the pack of enormous werewolves alone. Their ferocious, primal aura rushed towards him, but Enoch didn't flinch. The perilous situation made little Lilith, sitting in the carriage, cry out, "Dad, it's too dangerous." "Mister, why are you just standing there watching?" "Oh, my dad." Contrary to the little girl's worried expression, the black-haired knight remained utterly calm, stating that Enoch could handle it himself. Lilith couldn't comprehend the weight of those words. She didn't have time to think, as her father had already entered combat mode. His hands, coated in magical energy that extended to the blade of his sword, swung towards the werewolf monsters. The powerful and ferocious werewolves standing before Enoch were no different from rabbits, easily slaughtered, blood splattering everywhere. The werewolves posed absolutely no pressure or danger to him. What was this? The power of the strongest in the world. The descriptions in the story and witnessing it in reality were indeed vastly different. A noble family that only produced top-tier ability users, the foundation of the aristocratic system. The Empire's sole swordsman, the silver wolf of the battlefield, the undefeated warrior, the true power of that extraordinary being, the male protagonist, described some 5,000 times. While the little girl was still bewildered and amazed by her father's power, the two men were arguing about why he was asked to guard the carriage, but just stood there watching. Lilith wondered if this title upgrade was a bit too much. In a blink of an eye, she had become the daughter of the strongest. They were headed to the Namur Fa temple, coming here to use the temple's portal, the kind found in large cities, to reach the capital. Because commoners weren't allowed to enter the capital in ordinary clothes, Lilith changed into another outfit, a beautiful, soft garment that she really liked. This was the change brought about by the title upgrade overnight. The knights in the dune looked at the beautiful little girl before them, curiously inquiring about her age, asking why she was so small at 7 years old, and whether Duke Enoch made her starve. "Do you get scolded? Is your dad scary? What's he like when he's angry? Have you ever been hit?" The two of them posed countless questions. It seemed both of them were utterly terrified of Duke Enoch. Lilith honestly replied that she got scolded when she hid broccoli under her chicken, or when her dad found out she'd snuck chocolate after brushing her teeth. Hearing this, the two men nodded, murmuring, "You're still young. He's raising you so strictly. Of course, he's Enoch Rubinstein. Did you think he'd spoil his child?" When Lilith said she had never been hit by her father, both men were astonished. "No, sir. I've never been hit or yelled at. But uncles, is my dad really that scary?" Asked this question, the two knights immediately trembled dramatically. "Do you know Duke Enoch? He can tear a bear apart with his bare hands." As he spoke, the knight reenacted the terrifying scene. Lilith gasped at these words. "Tear a bear apart with his bare hands." The knight continued, "He's cold-hearted, but how cold-hearted is he? He used to be a difficult person to approach, but wasn't he on good terms with the commander?" The knight asked, then turned to look at the black-haired commander. Following everyone's gaze, Lilith saw the knight standing in front of the portal, and at this moment, she remembered him. No wonder she had found his appearance so familiar from the start. Axton Libra Mosdox, 7th rank. 7 years ago, after Lilith's father disappeared, he took over the position of commander. He would become her father's closest comrade and companion in the future rebellion. As expected, he was a major character in the original story. So that person really was Axton. With such a handsome face, there was no way he could be a minor character. As Lilith recalled the details of the story, the two knights were still chatting with each other. Wasn't Duke Enoch about to kill the commander just now? Yeah, if something had happened, it definitely would have been murder. Just then, the door behind the little girl opened. Her father had arrived. Lilith immediately ran towards him with joyful excitement, while the two knights stood ramrod straight, not daring to utter another word. Looking at her father in his knightly attire, his appearance and demeanor were completely different from the farmer he had been before. Lilith was awestruck by her father's appearance. At this moment, even if she hadn't read the novel, seeing him like this, she would have instantly known her father was the protagonist. Facing his daughter's astonished gaze, the Duke also bent down slightly to look at his daughter in her new clothes. He picked her up, admiring her. Then, he exclaimed in surprise, "An angel. No, this can't be happening. You're an angel. This is what my princess truly is." Seeing her father start to ramble again, Lilith blushed with embarrassment. "Dad, you're doing it again." The Duke embraced his daughter, pressing his cheek against hers, tears welling in his eyes. "My daughter has grown so beautiful, while I'm always dressed in shabby clothes." Watching the interaction between father and daughter, the two knights, initially terrified of Duke Enoch, were now completely dumbfounded by his besotted demeanor. Unable to bear the saccharine scene any longer, Axton said coldly, "Isn't this a bit much? Let's not waste any more time and get going." Hearing this, Duke Enoch scooped up his daughter and followed, patting her and saying, "Darling, give me a kiss." They stepped into the swirling magic of the portal. In an instant, the scenery completely changed as they stepped out. They had arrived directly at the temple in the capital, thousands of miles away. Lilith gazed around in wonder at the beautiful and luxurious surroundings. Several people in formal attire approached with smiles. "Duke Enoch, you've really returned." Enoch greeted them softly. "It's been a while, Your Highness." The silver-haired man clasped his hands together and bowed to Enoch and his daughter. "May Primera's blessings be with you." Watching Duke Enoch depart with his daughter in his arms, the group asked awkwardly, Duke Enoch, are you going straight home? Shouldn't there be a welcoming ceremony after we receive news of your return?" Hearing this, Enoch stopped, glanced back, and said, "The royal family will hold a welcoming ceremony, right? If so, I'll see you there. Today's journey was long, so I'm worried my daughter is tired." The streets of the capital made Lilith's eyes widen, as there were more people here than she had imagined. Lilith bid farewell to the knights, while Axton repeatedly reminded Duke Enoch to go straight home and not wander around. Enoch waved his hand impatiently, gesturing for him to leave quickly and stop pestering him. He had come all the way to the capital, and he was still nagging. Strolling down the street, Enoch asked with concern, "Princess, are you sure you don't want to take a carriage? It's a 15-minute walk home. Do you need me to carry you?" The little girl shook her head and continued walking. "If you always carry me, I'll forget how to walk. I can walk, and I also want to see the capital." Duke Enoch had no choice but to yield to his daughter's wishes, but still instructed, "But if your feet hurt, tell me immediately." Lilith nodded to her father with a smile, then glanced at the road ahead. She thought to herself, "All right, now I need to focus." The protagonist no longer needed to consider revenge for his daughter, Enoch Rubinstein. Lilith realized she had made a grave mistake, missing the opportunity for the story to begin. To rectify this, she needed to follow the original plot from now on at all costs. And the first thing she needed to do was on the streets. Wherever the father and daughter went, countless commoners lowered their heads to the ground as a sign of respect. "Sir Knight, may Primera's glory and blessings be with you." All the commoners bowed without exception, to the point that the Duke felt disgusted and irritated. The scene made Lilith uncomfortable. She knew this would happen, but it was excessive. What kind of country was this, where people had to kneel when greeting someone? It completely stripped a person of their dignity and self-respect. If this world hadn't been so excessively dismissive of human rights, the protagonist wouldn't need to start a rebellion, and Lilith from her past life wouldn't have had the subject for her thesis. So the first thing she needed to do was find the other protagonist, Chester, and make sure he met her father. Her father couldn't start a rebellion alone in this decaying empire. He needed Chester's help. Chester Rubinstein Dose, a swordsman of the Mage Knight Order. In the story, he, along with Enoch Rubinstein, was one of the strongest, situated at the very top. But there was a problem with the current situation. Originally, Chester was the illegitimate son of a noble, living a life of being bullied, but he happened to catch Enoch Rubinstein's attention and was adopted. What kind of coincidental event was it? Their first encounter wasn't mentioned in the book, so Lilith didn't know how they met. And since she was alive as his daughter, it was highly likely her father wouldn't notice Chester. Therefore, she needed to orchestrate their meeting. But it was like searching for a needle in a haystack. In such a vast capital, how could she find someone whose appearance she didn't even know? Lilith sighed, following her father down the street. Then she saw her father glance towards a dark alleyway. Curious, she followed his gaze. "Dad, what's over there?" The Duke shook his head, answering softly, "Nothing, nothing. It seems like a fight, but the security forces are patrolling, so we don't need to worry. Let's go, my princess." Hearing this, Lilith became excited and asked, "If there's a fight, shouldn't we go and stop them to maintain order?" The Duke sighed, acknowledging that it was indeed the right thing to do, but he didn't want to put his princess in danger. Faced with her father's attitude, Lilith tried to persuade him, "Don't worry, Dad. We'll just take a look, okay? You're strong, so it'll be fine, right?" The Duke had no choice but to agree to his daughter's decision. Then the two entered the alleyway. When she clearly saw the scene inside, Lilith gasped. She thought, "Aren't they just children?" The Duke asked in a loud voice, "What are you two doing?" Startled by the appearance of someone, the children turned around in surprise. The child being beaten was a boy with bright red eyes. Lilith shouted angrily, "You little brats," seeing a knight standing before them. The two children fearfully knelt down and saluted, "Greetings, my lord. May Primera's glory and blessings be with you." Duke Enoch waved his hand lightly and asked, "What's going on here?" A light brown-haired child answered nervously, We apologize for the noise. That commoner brat didn't greet me, so I..." Hearing his explanation, Lilith became even angrier, questioning, "You hit someone because they didn't greet you, and you're just a child." But faced with her question, the boy opposite her innocently replied, "Because I'm an 8th rank ability user." 8th rank was the 4th level among the 6 ranks of ability users. Lilith continued to ask, "Do you think it's okay to hit someone just because you're an ability user?" This question made the two children look at each other. Judging by their expressions, they naturally thought it was only right to be able to hit those of lower rank than them. At this moment, Duke Enoch spoke, interrupting the children's conversation. "Don't cause trouble. Leave quickly." The two children were startled, stood at attention, and were about to salute again, but the Duke waved his hand impatiently. "Go!" Watching the backs of the two boys running away as if chased by ghosts, Lilith reaffirmed that a rebellion was indeed necessary. But she didn't say it out loud, instead sarcastically muttering under her breath, "Life in the Empire is truly wonderful." Hearing this, the Duke sat down and patted her shoulder, wanting to explain to his daughter, "My little princess, you know." But before she could hear her father's words, the little girl remembered something she had almost forgotten. Then she walked towards the beaten boy in the corner and asked, "Are you all right?" Seeing the bruises all over the child's face and the blood at the corner of his mouth, Lilith looked worried. She took out her handkerchief and offered it to him. "Here, wipe the blood first." But unexpectedly, faced with her kindness, the boy swatted Lilith's hand away. Seeing his wary eyes, Lilith apologized. Sorry. I shouldn't have touched you so suddenly. I'll just leave the handkerchief here." Saying that, she placed the handkerchief with a cute rabbit pattern on the boy's leg. But as she got closer and looked at him from this angle, Lilith thought, "It's a bit bad to think this way since I just thought he was badly beaten. But isn't he too handsome? A fair face, jet black hair, and red eyes. A truly mysterious and cool pretty boy." Staring deep into those eyes, Lilith gasped, hurriedly covering her mouth. Black hair and red eyes. If this truly was the world of the novel, then there was one absolute rule. An ordinary background character couldn't be this handsome. If so, then this child must be Chester. After the shock, Lilith hurriedly approached and asked, "What's your name?" At this moment, the Duke also walked behind his daughter and said a few words of concern to the child. "Child, are you in much pain? Can you stand up?" However, ignoring the Duke and Lilith's concern, the child coldly tried to stand up and limped away. "Wait, little guy." The Duke tried to stop the child, but he was pushed away again. Lilith called out in a panic, "Hey, wait a minute." Seeing that his daughter wanted to chase after him, the Duke calmly stopped her, saying, "It's all right, my little princess. There are many people who don't like nobles. That child seems uncomfortable, so let be." Having said that, the Duke silently watched the child's retreating figure. Seeing the clear separation between commoners and nobles and such blatant class discrimination seemed to bring some reflection to the Duke as well. Watching her father's expression, Lilith realized something. Yes, this truly was the world of the novel, and the main plot was unfolding naturally. This must be the first encounter between the two protagonists, described as coincidental. With this thought, Lilith continued to walk home with her father. Dad. On the way, she hesitated for a moment, then asked the Duke a question, "Can I be friends with anyone I want?" This strange question left the Duke perplexed. He looked at his daughter with concern. "What do you mean?" Facing her father's gaze, little Lilith lowered her head, looked at the ground, and sighed. "I'm a noble, so does that mean I can't be friends with commoners?" Hearing this question, the hand holding his daughter's tightened abruptly. He answered thoughtfully, "No, Lilith. Whether noble or commoner, ability user or not, it doesn't matter. As long as you're happy, you can be friends with anyone." Lilith looked at her father in pleasant surprise. Really, seeing a happy smile on his daughter's face. The Duke smiled as well. "Of course, my daughter." Then Lilith continued, "That child just now, I don't know where he went. I don't know why, but I'm still worried and keep thinking about him." The Duke asked in confusion, "Are you this curious about someone you just met?" "Yes, I want to be friends with him. Can you help me find him? I'm curious if his injuries have been treated, and I want to talk to him." After listening to his daughter's request, the Duke was stunned for a moment, then suddenly scratched his head and laughed heartily. "Haha, I've given birth to an angel. How kind your heart is." In her father's affectionate embrace, Lilith insisted, "You'll help me find him, right, Dad?" The Duke nodded, holding his daughter close. "Yes, all right, of course. Have I ever refused you anything, my little princess?" This answer made Lilith happily hug the Duke. "You're the best, Dad. Thank you." Her small hand gripping the hem of Enoch's evening coat. The smile on Lilith's face turned serious, a thought flashing through her mind. If the original story was still unfolding, Chester should be at Marquis Onyx's house now. Lilith knew where he was. "Wait for me, Chester. I'll find you soon." That night, at Marquis Onyx's mansion, a voice questioned, "Jonathan, are you crazy? If you throw that child away, what are you going to do?" It was Marquis Onyx scolding his eldest son. The boy, Jonathan, shouted angrily, "I can't stand that brat being in this house." These words further enraged Marquis Onyx. "Shut up. If we randomly throw him away, what will happen if he's caught in a random ability user check?" Onyx rubbed his head in frustration. "If they find out he's an ability user, they'll have to investigate his lineage. It's only a matter of time before they find out he carries my blood. If that happens, I won't just be the father of a bastard child, and the one who threw him away like trash." Jonathan couldn't understand his father's worries. He angrily asked, "If you don't want to throw him away, then why not announce the bastard's existence to the world?" Marquis Onyx said, "That's why we have to lock him up and raise him in secret." This only confused Jonathan more, because we can kill him without anyone knowing. Jonathan couldn't accept breathing the same air as him. Hearing his son's heartless words, Marquis Onyx was stunned, then turned to leave the room, not forgetting to warn, "Don't try anything like that. I won't interfere in any other matters." Jonathan stared dejectedly at his father's back, then glanced with hateful eyes at the frail boy behind him. He approached, grabbed the boy by the collar, and raised his fist. "You filthy little brat." Faced with the fist that could strike his face at any moment, the pitiful Chester showed no intention of resisting, only closing his eyes, ready to take the blow. At that moment, he saw his movements slow down. Chester's consciousness became hazy, filled with a bewildered question. Could someone insignificant like him really have power? Because he was the child of an ability user. But he was too tired. He just wanted it all to end quickly. In the pitch black room, no different from an isolation cell, Chester's painful coughs echoed. After enduring another meaningless beating, his exhausted body, covered in bruises, lay on the cold floor. Chester told himself that dying would be much easier, but was he too afraid of death? With a pained hand, he took a clean, beautiful handkerchief from his pocket. He recalled the scene that afternoon in the alleyway, his chance encounter with that beautiful girl. She had given him the handkerchief, wanting to help him wipe the blood from his face. Chester looked at the handkerchief and thought, that noble girl's handkerchief. Why am I holding on to it? I just want to die. Arriving in front of their home, Lilith's expression showed just how shocked she was. Oh my goodness, it's huge. Before her wasn't a house, but a castle, a luxurious and magnificent mansion, with a vast and boundless garden. Seeing her father about to ring the doorbell, Lilith hurriedly stopped him. "Dad, wait a minute." Her whole body trembling, she stammered, "I need to prepare myself mentally." Seeing this, the Duke laughed. "Ha, there's nothing to worry about, my little princess." Seeing her father's relaxed expression, Lilith couldn't help but wonder, aren't you worried? After all, you haven't seen your family in 7 years. They entered the mansion, and countless people rushed towards them. "Young master." The excited cries of the butler and servants echoed through the castle. The young master has really returned. Seeing the familiar faces, a hint of a smile appeared on Enoch's usually indifferent face. "Hello, Remington. It's been a while, hasn't it?" Just then, Rem, the butler, also noticed the beautiful little girl beside the young master. "Oh my goodness, is this the young master's daughter?" "Oh, I can hardly believe it." Standing before the crowd, Lilith calmly and politely lifted her skirt and curtsied. "Hello, my name is Lilith." The child's mature demeanor and lovely appearance moved the butler to tears. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Lilith. My name is Ramina, but please call me Rem." Not only was the butler captivated by the little girl, but the surrounding maids were also quickly charmed by her cuteness. "Oh, the young miss is like an angel. She looks just like the young master. How adorable." Seeing everyone enamored with his princess daughter, Duke Enoch reluctantly spoke up to remind them, "Are you all planning to stand outside forever?" Hearing this, the butler was startled. "Oh dear, where are my manners?" I apologized to the young master and Miss Lilith. "In my 50 years of life, I've never experienced such a touching moment." Enoch chuckled and led his daughter inside. "Don't overdo it." As they walked, the butler continued to chatter. "We heard the Holy Knights received a royal order to bring you back, young master. But to be honest, none of us, not even the master, had much hope." Hearing this, Enoch chuckled. "I'm sure he'll be shocked to see me." But Lilith, walking beside him, couldn't share her father's laughter. Whenever her father's father, her grandfather, came into the picture, his presence was always oppressive. Nordic Rubinstein. He was a true nobleman. Like Lilith's father, he possessed a rare, high-ranking ability. When she read about his exploits, his pride seemed to manifest right before her eyes. In the original story, he had been incredibly kind to Chester, pretending not to care, but secretly arranging everything. Lilith secretly hoped he would be equally kind to her, but right now, that seemed like a pipe dream. Just then, the butler mentioned that Lady Audia was also here. Enoch asked in surprise, "My sister?" "Yes, Lady Audia believed you would return, young master, so she's been staying with the masters these past 2 weeks." Another character appeared, and Lilith was bewildered. She knew her father had a sister, but that sister was never mentioned in the story, so this was the first time Lilith had heard the name. "Oh my God, this is really happening." No matter how apprehensive she felt, she still had to face his family. The butler led the way, opening the door and inviting the father and daughter inside. "I'll inform the kitchen to prepare a feast, the grandest feast ever." How exciting. The doors slowly opened, and the soft light from within the mansion shone directly on Lilith's face. It was the luxurious, brilliant light from a beautiful chandelier. Every corner of the room seemed to shimmer with gold plating, making Lilith gasp in astonishment once again. "Is this a palace? Is that real gold? It must be real gold, right? Not gold plating, but the things in the castle are really made of gold." Seeing his daughter's shocked and bewildered expression, the Duke asked worriedly, "What's wrong?" But Lilith shook her head awkwardly. She marveled that her poor father, James, had not only hidden his abilities, but also his wealth. "Dad, isn't it too presumptuous to go straight upstairs?" Lilith felt extremely anxious. "Save me, oh God." Seeing her father suddenly open the study door, Lilith wanted to stop him, but it was too late. She froze, looking into the room along with her father. A stern, middle-aged man sat at the desk, and a beautiful young woman stood beside him. Seeing the person who had just opened the door, the beautiful girl cried out in surprise, "Oh my, Enoch." Enoch smiled. "I'm back, father." Meanwhile, Lilith silently observed her grandfather and had to admit his presence was indeed intimidating. How terrifying this feeling is. Grandfather Nordic slowly rose from his chair. Then he walked coldly towards Enoch, his expression looking dreadful, and said word by word. But before he could say anything, Enoch interrupted playfully, "Father, you've aged quite a bit. It's truly heartbreaking, oh my." The provoked grandfather Nordic raised his cane high and swung it down. "You little rascal." Just then his sister, Audia, intervened. "Father, there's a child here." The scene before her made Lilith tremble and clutch her father's coat. Grandfather Nordic nodded and looked down at the little girl, asking, "Is that your daughter?" Duke Enoch, seeing this, protectively embraced his daughter and replied irritably, "What do you mean is that? She's my princess." Nordic, with an aura as terrifying as a tropical storm, continued, "You raise her alone for 7 years without a single word to your family, dead or alive." Facing her grandfather's icy gaze, Lilith felt her heart clench, and it was only natural. He probably thinks I'm the reason they were separated for 7 years. If I were him, I'd probably hate myself too. Yes, I guess he'd react this way, thinking. With that thought, tears welled up in the beautiful girl's eyes. "Lilith, don't be discouraged, silly. This is normal. I don't want to be hated." "I'm sorry," Lilith said weakly, lowering her head. Her daughter's actions made Duke Enoch worriedly exclaim, "Princess, Lilith, why are you apologizing?" Then the Duke irritably reminded his father, "Father, please adjust your expression. Make it a bit friendlier. You're scaring my little princess." Hearing this, Nordic reluctantly interrupted, "Quiet." Then he slowly bent down and sat in front of Lilith. Looking at the formidable man before her, Lilith couldn't help but feel apprehensive, wondering if he was actually going to hit her. Thinking this, she squeezed her eyes shut in fear. But surprisingly, Grandfather Nordic didn't hit her or slap her. Instead, he gently placed his large hand on his granddaughter's soft cheek. The hand gently pinched Lilith's cheek. "What is this?" Looking at her father's stiff expression and hidden smile, coupled with her grandfather's hand, Lilith didn't react immediately. Was this her grandfather pinching her cheek? A moment later, she broke into a delighted grin. "Grandpa, I'm Lilith. I'm 7 years old. Grandpa, it's nice to meet you." Then the little girl happily threw herself into her grandfather's arms. Grandfather Nordic also gently embraced his lovely granddaughter. "That's right, I'm your grandfather." Later, in the spacious hallway, Aunt Audia gently told Lilith that she would introduce her to her cousins. "I have 2 sons, they're twins. They're a bit mischievous, which worries me, but they're good boys. They've always wanted a sibling, so I'm sure they'll like you." Through her aunt's words, Lilith recalled the original story. Right? If they're her sons, then they must be the heirs of Entrath. The twin heirs of the Duchy of Entrath. They were Enoch Rubinstein's nephews. One would become a holy knight and the other a magic swordsman. Standing in front of the door, Aunt Audia continued, "But Theo seems a bit frail, so I'm worried about him." The door to the room opened, and Lady Audia cheerfully called inside, "Look who's here, children." However, Lilith's expression wasn't exactly excited. She had read the original novel, and in that novel, many characters would die, especially these twin brothers. Both of them would die. The twins were among the few people Chester, her father's adopted son, truly opened his heart to. So when the 2 people Chester considered brothers, died, he nearly lost his mind. Regardless, seeing the 2 brothers in person, Lilith had to admit they were indeed identical. Upon seeing the twins, they huddled together, looking at the little girl before them, both exclaiming how small she was. They looked exactly alike, and Aunt Audia even said with a laugh that, embarrassingly, when these 2 really wanted to trick someone, even she, their mother, couldn't tell them apart. She turned to her 2 sons. "Your uncle just returned, and this lovely little girl is your cousin. Her name is Lilith." The first to greet the little girl was the frail-looking brother, Theo. In the original story, Theo, the one destined to become a holy knight, had been somewhat weak since birth. In the story, his personality was very gentle and considerate, taking care of the male protagonist, Chester, like a true older brother. Theo tragically died from a rare congenital disease in the spring of the 2nd year after being knighted. Considering the timeline, he had less than 4 years left to live. Facing his cousin, Theo gently patted her head. "Oh, how cute." On the other side, Aunt Audia also said to her other son, "Leon, you greet Lilith too." But Leon put on an indifferent expression and teased, "Such a small child doesn't look 7 years old at all. Dummy, I was much taller than her when I was 7. His words made Audia scold him angrily. "What did you just call your cousin? Dummy." She turned to Lilith with a smile. "Lilith, although your brothers look exactly alike, their personalities are completely opposite. Theo is gentle and kind, and Leon is mischievous and sly." Being belittled by his mother in front of his cousin whom he had just met, Leon was dissatisfied and was about to retort, but his mother flicked him painfully. "Leon, behave yourself and speak politely. How many times have I told you? If you keep this up, girls won't like you." It's only been a few days since you scared Miss Ballerina with that giant spider. Hearing this, Leon replied dejectedly. Miss Merica Ballerina said she liked the spider, so I gave it to her. Audia sighed tiredly, exasperated by her son's naive childishness. She only said that because she wanted to be friends with you, not because she actually liked that hairy spider. What kind of young lady would like that sort of thing, Hm? Listening to their conversation, Lilith couldn't help but think how difficult it must be to raise sons. Leon, who was destined to become a magic swordsman, was quite mischievous and had a habit of speaking without thinking, which often led to arguments with Chester. Of course, those weren't his true feelings. No one cared for Chester more than Leon. In the original story, around the second volume, there was a large-scale monster extermination battle. Leon sacrificed himself in that battle, using his body to shield Chester from a sneak attack. The depiction was so moving that even now, recalling it brought tears to Lilith's eyes. That moment made Leon both a hero and a pitiable figure. With a mix of complex thoughts and emotions, Lilith stepped forward, took Leon's hand, and said she was glad to meet him. Let's play together. We can go catch spiders like you wanted. Hee, I like big spiders too. Lilith genuinely wanted to get close to him, but after she spoke for a while, Leon didn't respond. Suddenly, Leon's eyes took on a thoughtful look, and he reached out and pinched Lilith's cheek. It seemed he hadn't controlled his strength well, pinching a little too hard, causing Lilith to cry out. Don't do that, Leon, Audia exclaimed, while Theo also hurriedly reminded his brother, Hey Leon, why did you pinch her cheek so hard? Only then did Leon flinch and quickly release his hand. But the little girl's soft, white cheeks were already red, and pearl-like tears rolled down her beautiful face. The pinch had hurt, but Lilith hadn't intended to cry like this. Why were the tears falling? Why, just when she was moved by remembering Leon's tragic end in the original story, would he pinch her? Leon was at a loss, not knowing how to explain, while Theo stepped forward to comfort his cousin. Oh dear, that must have hurt. Lilith, don't cry. As for Leon, he muttered dejectedly, I just thought you were cute. Audia came closer, scolding her son angrily. Apologized to her quickly. Leon had to awkwardly apologize to his newly met cousin. Seeing his appearance, Lilith thought he looked so pitiful. She smiled, wiping away her tears. No, brother, I'm fine. It didn't hurt at all. I'm sorry. I suddenly started crying like this. But next time, please pinch my cheeks more gently. Lilith's lovely smile and sweet voice made Leon freeze for a moment, his face visibly reddening. Turning his head shyly, Leon replied, okay. That afternoon, as the setting sun cast its golden glow upon the manor, Lilith sat at the luxurious dining table, her mouth agape. Oh my, this is so extravagant. Countless delicacies were exquisitely presented, along with a multitude of fruits for dessert. It was like a royal feast. Is everything ready? Everyone was seated at the dining table, attentively served by the servants. Please enjoy, young ladies and gentlemen. And Audia smiled, telling Lilith to eat more. The little girl looked at the table before her. There were so many utensils that Lilith didn't know where to begin. What should I do? All right, for now, I'll just follow Leon sitting next to me. Just then, her grandfather also came to the dining table and sat in his place. Seeing him come alone, Audia asked in confusion, Where's Enoch? Nordic replied, Enoch said he'll join us after he organizes his things. Let's eat first. His presence quieted the dining table. So this is how nobles dine. The numerous etiquettes and rules made Lilith so apprehensive that she couldn't even taste the food. Suddenly, he called Leon's name, startling the boy. I heard you cause some trouble. Seeing her father inquire, Audia explained the whole story in her son's stead. Father, Leon has already apologized to Miss Ballerina. I also felt very sorry, so I plan to have tea with Countess Ballerina before we leave. They were talking about the giant spider incident, but now it seems more serious than I thought. Grandfather continued, I've heard many stories about your mother causing trouble, but now I hear you're creating chaos as well. I should tell you this. You also carry the Rubinstein name. You're 12 years old now, so understand the weight of that name. Always consider your actions carefully and avoid causing trouble. Listening to his grandfather's admonition, coupled with Nordic's overwhelming presence, a mischievous child like Leon could only respond softly, not daring to utter another word. Behave properly and don't do anything reckless. Maintain a demeanor worthy of being an example to others. I hope that from now on, I won't hear of any further issues that damage the family's honor. Leon listened and nodded dejectedly. I'm sorry. Sitting beside him, Lilith wasn't too surprised by her grandfather's attitude, as it was exactly as described in the original story. He was a perfect example of a true nobleman. He adhered to laws and rules as if his life depended on it, and he utterly detested anything improper. Consequently, Lilith felt like crying. She performed a timely, tearless sob, staring at the steak in front of her. Having never learned any noble etiquette, Lilith didn't know what to use to eat the steak. Lilith realized with a pang of distress that she had never learned noble etiquette, and she didn't know what to do. Maybe if she cheated a little, there might still be a chance. Leon, sitting next to her, saw that his cousin hadn't eaten anything and asked with concern, "Why aren't you eating anything?" Theo spoke up, "Lilith, are you already full?" Facing the two of them, Lilith could only shake her head awkwardly. "No, it's not like that." Their conversation quickly caught the attention of Aunt Audia, who also asked with concern what was wrong with Lilith. In the blink of an eye, the little girl became the focus of the entire dining hall. "Oh dear, why did things turn out like this? How should I answer? Should I admit that I really don't understand table manners? Would that be better? My grandfather and aunt both know I've never used these utensils, but they've probably been worried about my father all along." Lilith thought anxiously, if they see my clumsiness, will they feel even worse? Why hasn't father arrived yet? The brothers sitting on either side of her saw their cousin speechless. They glanced at each other and nodded, seeming to understand something. Just then, Duke Enoch opened the door and walked in. "Sorry I'm late." Seeing her father, Lilith's spirits immediately lifted, cheering inwardly. "Father's here. James Brown, my savior." Catching his daughter's pleading gaze, the Duke immediately understood the problem. "Ah, Lilith, let's eat together." But at that moment, Aunt Audia suddenly exclaimed, "Oh my goodness, Leon." Lilith was startled and turned to look at her cousin. "What's wrong? What happened?" She saw Leon rudely pick up the steak on his plate and take a bite. His mother cried out in dismay, "Why are you eating so rudely? Your cousin is sitting right next to you. Not only Leon, but Theo as well." "Oh my, you too, Theo. Who taught you to use a knife so carelessly? Hold it properly." Amidst Aunt Audia's frantic admonishments, grandfather silently observed the situation without speaking. After forcefully cutting a large piece of meat, Theo placed the cut steak in front of Lilith. "Here, eat this, Lilith." Looking at the cut meat before her, Lilith's eyes shimmered with emotion. "Oh my, what thoughtful children, what good older brothers." Aunt Audia still didn't understand, continuing to nag at the two boys, asking why they were acting as if they wanted to be scolded. Meanwhile, Duke Enoch breathed a sigh of relief and chuckled softly. Audia looked warily at her father. "Father, I'm sorry. I should have taught them better." But before she could finish, he shook his head and said, "Enough, let's eat." Seeing that everyone had to drop the previous topic and eat together, little Lilith put a piece of steak in her mouth. The tender, melt-in-your-mouth meat was incredibly delicious, and it felt like her whole body was radiating vitality. "This is pure bliss." The Duke, sitting opposite her, saw his daughter eating so deliciously and smiled happily. Grandfather also took the time to show concern for his granddaughter. "Is it good?" Lilith nodded hurriedly. "Yes, grandfather, it's very delicious." Grandfather pondered for a moment, then continued, "Good, then eat more." After dinner, night quickly descended upon the manor. Lilith was led into her own room by her father. Upon arriving, Lilith exclaimed, "Wow." This was the umpteenth time she'd uttered the word today. "Do you like it, my daughter?" Of course, she adored the room. "Oh, look at this bed, so soft and comfortable." Duke Enoch lay down beside her, calling her name. "Hey, little princess. That boy we met in the alley today, do you remember him?" At her father's mention of this, Lilith nodded seriously. "That's Cheshire," she thought to herself. Facing his daughter, the Duke made a solemn promise. "I must go and find that boy immediately. I'll find him soon, and when I find where he lives, we'll go and ask him if he needs help." "Thank you, father, but there's no rush." Lilith nodded happily. In truth, she had just been thinking about this matter. It was a bit unfortunate that no matter what her father did now, it would be difficult to find Cheshire. They had met by chance earlier, but such a thing wouldn't happen twice. According to the original story, it would be another 2 years before Duke Enoch and Cheshire met again. Currently, Cheshire was being raised in secrecy within Marquis Onyx's mansion. Meanwhile, Enoch, having returned after a 7-year absence, was still unfamiliar with the goings-on in the capital. He wasn't the type to resort to the illegal guilds of the underworld to search for someone. Looking at her father's contemplative face, Lilith snuggled into his arms, thinking to herself, "I suppose I'll have to help." She comforted him, Let's go to sleep, father. Don't worry too much. Lilith made up her mind. Your daughter will take care of everything. The next morning, a beautiful dawn welcomed the ducal residence. The butler entered Lilith's room with two maids, introducing them as her personal maids. The two maids were named Jetty and June. These are the maids who will be attending to Mississippi. From today onwards, the young master will be confined. Oh no, he won't be leaving his study. Will Miss be all right? Standing before the butler, the little girl nodded vigorously, yes, sir. Of course, her father, as the head of the family, would be incredibly busy after a 7-year absence. Naturally, she understood these things. The butler cheerfully continued his introductions. Both Jetty and June are very experienced, having passed the 50 to 1 selection rounds to become your personal maids. Hearing this, the energetic maid with short hair introduced herself. I am Jetty, Mississippi. I earned the position of Mrs. Personal Maid by winning the bathwater temperature regulation, painting, and dessert-making competitions. I'm very proud. Next to me is June. We are sisters, and I'm the elder sister. Lilith exclaimed in surprise. Wait, there are competitions for these things. Really? Now is the other maid's turn. I am June. I hold the record of 47 push-ups and 55 sit-ups, with a long jump of 3 meters, ranking at the top of the overall standings. Please believe, miss, that I will serve you wholeheartedly. Hearing this, Lilith became even more bewildered, unsure why these skills were necessary to care for a 7-year-old. Regardless, the little girl bowed politely to the two maids. It's a pleasure to meet you, Jetty and June. The little lady's politeness naturally moved the two maids to tears. Miss, why are you so small and so cute? Oh, look at those chubby cheeks. They look like 2 dumplings as if they'll melt. The butler, standing beside them, chuckled happily and clapped his hands. All right, ladies, that's enough. We must conclude the greetings. Now we will announce Mrs. schedule for today. The master has requested that we begin your education starting today, and your tutor will arrive at 10 a.m. From everyone's expressions, Lilith realized they seemed to feel guilty about having her start studying the day after arriving in the capital. But coincidentally, this was precisely what Lilith wanted. She replied excitedly, Yes, Uncle Rem, I can study, and I'm very good at studying. I'll do my best. Looking at the little one's serious expression, the butler wiped his sweat awkwardly. Oh, I should make a note of that. You really are like the young master your age. But today is just the first day, so it's mainly introductions. There won't be anything too difficult. Later in the classroom, a woman's voice rang out. Now look, there are 2 apples here, right? But 2 more apples appear like this. So now there are 4 apples. The red-haired lady was the mathematics tutor, Countess Lena. 2 times 2 equals 4. Listening to the teacher's lesson, Lilith felt speechless, her hands clasped together. At this age, I'm learning basic multiplication. The teacher continued to ask, now, if 2 more apples appear, and they appear 3 times, how many apples will there be? Leon quickly raised his hand to answer. 2 times 3 equals 6. The teacher had to remind him, Young master, please let Miss answer. You already know this knowledge, don't you? Theo also agreed with the teacher's idea. That's right, Leon, don't interrupt Lilith while she's learning. Listening to their conversation, Lilith grew even more frustrated. It would be better to let him interrupt. She could study etiquette and liberal arts, as those were necessary, but sitting through these basic math problems was another matter entirely. The teacher's voice rang out, Is it too difficult for you? Lilith lied in response, yes. Then she was heard comforting and continuing, Why don't you try it? It's okay to get it wrong, so think hard about it. Seeing her cousin hesitate, Leon once again interjected, Hey, little one, do you want me to tell you the answer? The teacher and Theo simultaneously reminded him in frustration, Young master, no, I told you not to interrupt. Lilith closed her eyes in frustration, doodling on the paper. There was no time for this, she thought, as she needed to find Cheshire as soon as possible. Cheshire became her family's son in the autumn of his 13th year. Based on the age gap with her father, Cheshire must be 11 years old now, meaning he would have to endure 2 more years of mistreatment in Marquis Onyx's household. This won't do. I need to help father find Cheshire sooner. To do that, first I need to find one person, and that's the future head of the Intelligence Guild, the one who will become father's ally in the future. If I can find that person first and pull them to our side, not only will rescuing Cheshire become easier, but everything else will proceed more smoothly as well. But to meet that person, Lilith needed to sneak out. However, in the body of a 7-year-old, there were too many obstacles, and now she was stuck in the study solving math problems. She already had all the multiplication tables memorized from her previous life. Suddenly, the teacher exclaimed in surprise, "Little miss, how did you do that?" While Lilith was still bewildered, her two cousins also crowded around to look at her work, exclaiming in alarm, "Oh my little one, you're so smart, you solved it without any calculations." Hearing this, Lilith unconsciously looked down at her own work, which caused her eyes to widen. "Oh my God, I wrote the entire multiplication table, all the way up to 19. Oh my God, this is bad." Lilith started trembling. How could she get out of this situation? A 7-year-old writing the 19 times table. Wait, a thought flashed through her mind. Perhaps this situation wasn't so bad. There were children in this world who were good at mental arithmetic, right? Lilith quickly decided to finish the basic lessons as fast as possible, reducing wasted time so she could help her father sooner. She immediately asked the teacher cheerfully, "Teacher, did I do it right?" The teacher was completely bewildered. "Oh, how did you do that?" Lilith replied with an innocent smile, saying it was because she explained it so clearly, so she was able to do it. This flattery made the teacher's jaw drop again. "No, I haven't taught you anything yet." Lilith giggled and continued, "If 2 apples appear 3 times, there will be 6 in total. Thank you for teaching me." However, the teacher still disagreed. "But I didn't teach you that if 19 apples appear 9 times, the total will be 171. Seeing this, Lilith called out, "Teacher." The little girl silently prayed in her heart, "Please just keep going like this." On the outside, she feigned composure and suggested, "You said that after multiplication comes division, right? It's so much fun learning this, so please teach me more." The child's reaction made the teacher ponder for a long time. Suddenly, her eyes snapped into focus, and she bent down, speaking excitedly to Lilith. "I believe the princess is a once-in-a-millennium genius, an undeniably rare talent." My goodness, what has happened? The teacher grasped Lilith's small hands. "Princess, from now on, I will support your studies to the best of my ability." At that time, Lilith didn't know. She didn't realize that this action would cause a great disaster in the future. After class, Lilith went to a bakery in the capital with her 2 cousins and aunt. The delicious, fresh pastries made the little girl feel incredibly happy and satisfied. "How is it, Lilith? Is it delicious?" The little girl nodded her head happily in response. "It's the most delicious." So the 2 brothers sitting on either side of her continuously fed their little cousin the delicious pastries. "Haha, so cute. Mother, Lilith really looks like a little squirrel." Aunt Audia, sitting next to them, watched the children interact, feeling their happiness. "She's so cute the way she eats. Remember to eat slowly, otherwise you'll get a stomachache." Lilith nodded immediately, thinking to herself, being able to eat such expensive macarons. This is practically heaven. Just then, Aunt Audia suddenly stood up and looked out the window at a carriage that had just stopped. "Oh, is that Countess Ballerina? Oh, and Marika is here too." Hearing Marika's name, Leon immediately panicked. "What? Miss Marika?" He then hid behind his cute little cousin, leaving Lilith confused. "What's wrong, brother? Why are you hiding like that? I can't hear anything." Leon helplessly hugged his little cousin, complaining, "Really, it's so annoying." Seeing this scene, Theo, who was sitting next to them, helplessly explained that Leon intensely disliked Marika. When she visited a few days ago, Leon had tried to scare her with a giant spider, and Marika ended up getting hurt, so his mother scolded him. Hearing this, Lilith realized that Marika was the victim of the giant spider incident. From the doorway, a beautiful young lady in a green dress, her hair shining, walked in, cheerfully calling Leon's name. But when she saw Leon tightly hugging another little girl, Marika's footsteps stopped, and her expression darkened as she asked, word by word, "What's going on, Leon? Who is this girl?" Marika's completely changed attitude sent chills down Lilith's spine. She thought, why has the atmosphere suddenly become like a battlefield of love? "Who is this girl?" Marika asked angrily, while Leon coldly replied, "What's it to you?" Her cousin's attitude startled Lilith, and she screamed internally, "Oh my God, why would you say that? This isn't some romantic scene between a middle-aged couple." At this moment, Audia approached and asked, "Marika, how's your forehead? Is it much better?" Marika smiled brilliantly and replied, pointing at Lilith, "Yes, I'm much better, but who is this girl?" Audia answered with a smile, "She's Leon's cousin." Immediately, Marika became surprised. "What? Oh, right, Duke Rubenstein might be on his way. Is that true? His Grace has returned." Audia confirmed, "Yes, just yesterday." Hearing this, Marika breathed a sigh of relief. "You should have told me sooner." Then she pushed Leon aside and rushed towards Lilith. "Nice to meet you. are you the Duke's daughter? You look just like an angel. You startled me. I almost became jealous of you. America Ballerina, 12 years old. The older girl's rapid change of face amused Lilith somewhat, but she gently introduced herself. I'm Lilith Rubinstein, 7 years old. You're really pretty, like a princess. Marika blushed at the compliment. Thank you, Lilith. And one more thing, I vow to spend my life with Leon. Ignoring Leon's helpless protests of, are you crazy? Who decided that? Marika smiled and patted Lilith's shoulder. We'll be family, so you can call me sister. Let's talk casually and get close, okay? Observing her cousin's helpless expression, Lilith also felt this was all rather surreal. Unexpectedly, she saw Leon as a suitable partner, not Theo. Did Marika like the bad boy type? That evening, at the ducal residence, Enoch flung open the door and walked into the room, calling out his daughter's name. My princess. Lilith, caught in a tight embrace, couldn't help but remind him, Father, really the door almost came off. Have you eaten dinner? Hearing this, the Duke released his daughter and replied, what time is it? I ate earlier in the study. Hearing his answer, Lilith smiled brightly. That's great, because you didn't skip a meal. I also went out and ate some delicious things with my aunt and cousins. We even went to the tailor to get measured for clothes, and my aunt bought me 10 outfits. Listening to his daughter recount her day, the Duke laughed heartily and asked if she enjoyed herself. Lilith, of course, loved it, as her aunt had even bought her a princess dress. As the two of them lay in bed before sleep, the Duke said, wait a minute, you were studying all day today, right? Lilith shook her head and replied that it wasn't all day, only until around 3 in the afternoon. Duke Enoch looked at his child, his gaze softening. I'm sorry, my princess. I originally only intended for you to learn etiquette, but your grandfather had me add all sorts of things. Hearing these words, Lilith was surprised. What are you talking about, father? Of course, a person needs to learn everything, and studying is fun. Enoch asked doubtfully, really. Lilith reaffirmed, if you didn't let me study, my intelligence might only be as high as a chimpanzee's. Despite her saying so, the Duke still felt guilty for making his daughter study so much. Children should have more time to play rather than study. Understanding her father's worries, Lilith could only try to comfort his gentle heart, telling him that she truly preferred studying to playing. Really, father, if I find it too difficult or too boring, I'll tell you, but it's really fun and easy. Seeing the smile on his daughter's face, the Duke put down the burden in his heart. I understand. Actually, your mathematics teacher said you're a genius, but I already knew that. Hearing the sudden praise, Lilith's eyes widened in excitement. Really, truly, she felt a little embarrassed for being praised for solving elementary problems, but if her father liked it, it was fine. The Duke hugged his daughter again, nuzzling her soft cheek. Who does my daughter take after? How is she so smart? Lilith laughed and said, like father, I was very busy today, wasn't I? I've been working hard. After his little daughter's concerned inquiry, the Duke's fatigue was swept away. It's all right, dear. Our genius daughter is studying hard, so father can't just sit still either, right? Just like her father, Lilith felt happy seeing his smiling face, and she wasn't too upset about making her father proud of her. The feeling was novel, but also wonderful. Genius. It's fun to be a genius, isn't it? But a few days later, Lilith wanted to take that thought back. The little girl really wanted to retract her foolish actions. Actually, I'm not a genius. Oh dear. Standing before the little girl was a new teacher. The little girl wanted to take back her words. I'm not a genius at all. Oh dear. The reason for such despair was facing a male teacher. It's a pleasure to meet you, miss. I am Robert Quinn, a member of the Magical Talent Department. You can call me Robert, Princess. Yes, sir, Lilith answered weakly, causing the Duke standing next to her to comfort her. Don't be too worried, my daughter. Just answer this gentleman's questions comfortably. If you don't know, just say you don't know. Speaking of which, the Duke couldn't help but recall his last conversation with the mathematics teacher. The mathematics teacher had displayed all of Lilith's perfect assignments and said that she wasn't qualified to teach the princess. While it sounded a bit unbelievable, the teacher repeatedly stated that the princess was indeed a genius, a true prodigy. When children showed extraordinary abilities in subjects like mathematics, they would be recruited by the tower for early childhood education programs. Grandfather Nordic also said he had contacted the tower, and he would personally verify Lilith's ability level. Hearing this news, Enoch angrily questioned why they hadn't asked Lilith about this matter or discussed it with him. Grandfather Nordic replied that it was just a simple childhood aptitude test, and whether or not the child went to the tower was still her own decision, but a good result would put Enoch's mind at ease, knowing she could work at the tower later. Indeed, after hearing his father's words, Enoch fell silent. It wasn't a lie, because in the Pavilion Empire, all high-ranking ability users had to join the military, but tower researchers were at the very bottom of the conscription list, only required to participate in bloody wars if the empire was collapsing. So joining the tower was what the Duke hoped his daughter would do. Enoch sighed, saying that now he would ask for Lilith's opinion. At this point, Grandfather Nordic also bent down and asked his granddaughter, "Are you nervous? You just need to do as you did yesterday when you started with your teacher." However, Lilith blamed herself for being too obvious. Things had become this big all because of studying mathematics. Formulas were used when casting spells, and the people who created these formulas were the tower researchers. They had one thing in common. They were all mathematical geniuses. The field of mathematics was the underlying principle behind magic circles, which was why the tower sought out children who excelled at math and supported their talent development at a young age. Lilith knew this. She had memorized the entire world setting from the original story, but she hadn't expected to encounter this problem herself. A genius. More like an idiot. At this moment, Robert hesitantly turned around and introduced. Over there is, as the Duke knows, that is Oscar Manuel, the youngest tower master in history, a very beautiful young man, like an elf, with striking golden eyes. Looking at the man, Lilith silently gasped in surprise. It was Oscar. She hadn't expected to meet such an important figure so soon. Was this really a butterfly effect caused by just doing some multiplication and division? Tower Master Oscar was actually an enemy. When Enoch prepared for rebellion and recruited high-ranking ability users, nobles and politicians were on his side. However, her father, Enoch, couldn't win the support of the tower. Oscar hadn't helped her father until the very end. If her father could control the tower, this person played a key role in it, and the rebellion might have happened 3 years earlier. But did Oscar support the Empire? Not necessarily. Even though Lilith had read the entire original story, she still couldn't understand his motives. Lilith stared at the chalk in front of her, then took it in her hand, thinking, "I've decided I'm going to pretend to be a genius, establish a connection with the tower, and try to pull Oscar over to our side. Okay, it feels much better to have a goal." The little girl decided to tackle the problem in today's lesson. A calculation with quite a large number, but the little girl solved it quickly. Examiner Robert exclaimed in surprise, "Amazing." Even Duke Enoch, who witnessed it firsthand, was also very surprised. "Oh, my daughter really is a genius." But Tower Master Oscar coldly interrupted, "Are you joking? Did I come all the way here just to watch a child play with toys?" Robert hurriedly apologized after hearing that. Facing him, Oscar's pale golden eyes turned frightening, and he repeated, "Make sure to check thoroughly." The flustered Robert immediately changed the problem on the blackboard, making little Lilith look carefully at this new problem. Lilith couldn't help but ask in her heart, "What is this?" The little girl complained internally, "Are you asking a 7-year-old to solve a linear equation?" Oscar approached, pleasantly lifting his chin in provocation. "Try it." Lilith silently held the chalk, looking at the problem on the blackboard. She hadn't intended to solve it, but this was insane. This Oscar fellow must be living in his own world, obsessed with being a genius. After hesitating for a moment, the little girl shook her head and said, "I don't know." This reaction left Oscar surprised and bewildered. Robert approached to comfort her. "Princess, you needn't be upset. Even the prodigies recruited by the tower can't solve this problem at the age of 7. Both her grandfather and father embraced her, consoling. "That's right, little princess, you did well. This problem is too difficult. Our princess is so smart. You did a great job, Lilith." But contrary to the others, Oscar turned to leave, his tone laced with annoyance, a waste of time on a fool. His words immediately darkened Duke Enoch's expression. Lilith, sensing her father's overwhelming aura, predicted things would take a turn for the worse. As she'd thought, the Duke, his face ice cold, looked at Oscar's retreating back and commanded, "Stop, Oscar." Hearing this, Oscar calmly turned to face the Duke and replied, "I said I just wasted my time on a fool, Duke." Enoch laughed, a sound edged with anger, then gritted out, "Apologize to my daughter." Now, Oscar calmly adjusted his cuff, pointing to his watch. "You should be apologizing to me for wasting my precious time. You've wasted 1 hour and 37 minutes of my time." Enoch frowned, retorting, "Who asked you to come here?" It wasn't necessary for the Tower Master to come personally. You came on your own accord. Oscar offered a provocative shrug. "I was merely curious. After all, she is Enoch Rubinstein's daughter. But it seems she's no different from other disappointing children. Everyone is just infatuated with number games. His words were incredibly offensive. Enoch naturally wasn't having it. Even I couldn't do what my daughter did just now when I was 7, he argued. Who could solve that problem at her age? Unexpectedly, Oscar pointed to himself. I could solve it correctly when I was 7. Ignoring him, Enoch reiterated, apologize. Oscar stubbornly replied, I refuse. This rude and obstinate attitude made Enoch's anger unbearable. He roared, do you have any manners? Seeing his son's fury, Nordic had to step in to mediate. He looked at Oscar. Tower Master, it was I who contacted you regarding my granddaughter. It's regrettable that she didn't meet your expectations. Let's end today's matters here. Though Nordic had spoken humbly, Oscar seemed to have no intention of stopping. He continued, a sneer twisting his lips. Is that so? It seems Nordic has gotten old. Where has that sharp judgment I used to respect gone? He dared to disrespect Nordic so blatantly. It was unbelievable. Duke Enoch, enraged, bellowed. Tower Master. Lilith, standing to the side, listening to their exchange, clutched her dress, reigning in her rising fury. Control yourself. Control yourself. Don't show it, Lilith. There's nothing to gain, please. Yet two conflicting thoughts warred within the little girl's mind, held together by only a thin thread of reason. Why should I hold back? Should I just let someone who insulted grandfather leave so easily? Oscar waved his hand dismissively. You're welcome to come back. Your daughter is simply mediocre in this field. Don't dream of more. Focus on rebuilding your family, the one you abandoned for 7 years, and then pass it on to the next generation. Oscar's final words successfully snapped the thread of reason in Lilith's mind. Did he really have to go that far? And so, the little girl stepped forward, her voice ringing out clear and strong. I'll solve it. Give me 5 minutes. I want to retake that test. If I answer correctly, you have to apologize to my grandfather and father for your rudeness. Faced with this request, Oscar sneered and nodded. Very well, please proceed. Watching his daughter pick up the chalk once more, Duke Enoch anxiously advised, my princess, you don't need to force yourself. However, Lilith resolutely walked towards the blackboard. Everyone around them focused on the little girl's every move. Even Oscar was no exception. Moments later, as the last chalk mark settled, astonishment was clearly etched on the faces of everyone present. Lilith, having completed her solution, turned to face him, the 17-year-old Tower Master, Oscar. Under the astonished gazes of all, the small 7-year-old girl had successfully solved the equation. After a moment, Oscar's voice rang out, I am thoroughly defeated. I sincerely apologize for offending you. He bowed his head earnestly to Enoch and Nordic. Lilith had to look at the young man again, straight in the eye, because his attitude was so strange. He had been so rude just moments ago, yet now he was so earnest. She had expected him to stomp his feet in anger until evening. But what was with the madness in his eyes? Looking at Nordic and Enoch, Oscar suggested, I have an educational proposal regarding your granddaughter. Sensing a bad omen, Lilith couldn't help but tremble. Just as she'd thought, he must be an X factor. That afternoon, under the warm setting sun, Lilith sat at the dining table, feeling as if everything was unreal. She wondered what she had done wrong, because afterward, Oscar had dinner with their family and proposed to personally tutor Lilith. Of course, because the opportunity was right in front of her and Lilith wanted to recruit him, she had to agree to this. But in trying to force things forward, she had only made things worse. While seated at the table, the door suddenly opened, startling Lilith. Oscar walked in, rubbing his stomach. Thank you for the meal. Then he sat down next to Lilith. Facing this guy, Lilith silently grew wary because somehow he seemed like a different person. Oscar looked at the little girl, then he closed his eyes slightly, murmuring, let's study a little more. As his voice faded, magical energy appeared, supporting a sheet of paper that floated in front of Lilith. Amazing, isn't it? Though she didn't quite like this guy, Lilith had to admit the magic was indeed wonderful. Oscar explained in detail, every space has coordinates. To create magic formulas, you need to know how to express spatial concepts with mathematical equations. Lilith understood immediately. So that means expressing space with methods, meaning you need to have a general understanding of the concept of vectors, which is part of advanced natural science education, to create magic formulas. If so, then magic seems quite systematic, right? Oscar wrote on the paper, do you know numbers smaller than 0? Lilith, of course. knew, but she feigned ignorance. Are there numbers smaller than 0? Giving her a calculation problem, Oscar told her to solve it herself. It was to calculate 3 to 5. Holding the paper, the little girl pondered, I guess I have to pretend to think for a while and then write down the answer, right? It seemed he was going to teach her the concept of negative numbers. Suddenly, Oscar uttered 2 words, too small. Lilith was startled. Small? What's small? Are you talking about this number? Oscar smiled and shook his head. No, I'm talking about you. You're too small. Hearing these words, Lilith was taken aback, but his next words frightened her even more. It's a bit unusual for a 7-year-old to be this small. Lilith's hand holding the pen trembled. That's right, I'm smaller than my peers. There's a reason behind it. He hasn't figured something out, has he? At this point, Oscar shrugged and continued. Perhaps it's because you don't eat enough, so you don't grow. Actually, for the character Oscar, Lilith had read enough to remember the original story, but she still couldn't understand him. Was he spouting nonsense, or did he really know her secret? Lilith didn't know anymore. Feigning nonchalance, the little girl murmured, then I'll eat more from now on. Oscar nodded in satisfaction. Eat more, and you need to eat healthier to grow faster if you want to work with me. Lilith replied coldly, but I'm not planning to go to the tower. Oscar explained, puzzled, it would be more convenient for you to work at the tower. Lilith smiled and nodded. If that's the case, then I'll reconsider. That night, in her bedroom, the little girl couldn't help but recall the events that had transpired. The knights she had met before were also very surprised to learn her real age was 7, because how could a 7-year-old be so small? Even her brother, Leon, had sensed it. Actually, when Lilith still thought she was just a supporting character, she had assumed her body was simply in a developmental stage, slower than others. But it turned out there was a reason for the slow development. As the protagonist child, this was only natural, but she wasn't an ordinary person. Lilith Rubinstein, this pitiful supporting character who was kidnapped by the royal family and later died, this was eventually revealed. But in reality, at this moment, Duke Enoch came to her bedside, stroking his daughter's head. My genius princess, it's time to sleep. Lilith complained shyly, stop calling me a genius. Enoch chuckled, hugging her tightly as usual. My daughter did her best today. Did you see how grandfather's smile stretched all the way to his ears? He always tells me not to be rash, but today he was the one who was overly excited. As he spoke, the Duke yawned widely, prompting Lilith to giggle and suggest, if you're tired, go to sleep quickly. The Duke asked blankly, why can't the princess sleep? Lilith put on a wise, old face and nodded, saying that the princess had something on her mind. Duke Enoch took a book from her shelf. You must not be sleepy. Do you want me to read you a story? Let me see. Today's story is about a princess trapped in a tower. Lilith feigned enthusiasm out of boredom, as the bedtime story routine had become rather tedious ever since she remembered her past life. Her father loved to read to her, so she always patiently endured and listened attentively. Today's story began in a way very similar to their situation, which made Lilith laugh. Once upon a time, there was a kind king and a princess. The king loved his daughter, the princess, very much. Then one day, when the princess was 7 years old, the evil king of the neighboring country kidnapped the princess. The kind king, having lost his daughter, cried every day. The kind king offered his treasures to the evil king and became his servant. But even so, the evil king still did not return the princess. Hearing this, Lilith was completely stunned, while Duke Enoch complained about how they could be so cruel as to separate a father and daughter. As for Lilith, she was surprised because why did this story sound more and more familiar? The kind king overcame his sorrow and met a boy, a very healthy boy. One day, when the boy reunites with the princess, he will be able to become a precious older brother. Therefore, the kind king adopted the boy. Hearing this, Lilith blurted out, wait a minute. Under her father's questioning gaze, the little girl explained awkwardly, oh, it's nothing. I just felt happy, so please continue reading, father. The story continued. Then one day, the evil king announced that the princess had fallen ill and died. This plot twist was incomprehensible to Duke Enoch, who was about to close the book. The princess just died like that. What kind of nonsense story is this? However, Lilith urged her father to continue reading. She explained that the evil king was likely lying, as the princess couldn't possibly be truly dead. This is a story about a princess. How could the princess die? So Enoch continued to turn the pages. The kind king was furious. He decided to take revenge with the prince. The kind king and the prince defeated all the bad guys in the evil kingdom and finally, they captured the evil king and pointed their swords at him. I will avenge my daughter. While narrating the story, Duke Enoch acted out the motions as in the story, which made Lilith freeze completely. Those were scenes Lilith was very familiar with from reading the original story of this world. That rebellion, when the king was captured by Enoch, he had said some very strange words. Enoch Rubinstein, do you think this will go as simply as you hope? With the old king's words, Duke Enoch was shocked to see a figure appear before him. It was a girl with long, platinum blonde hair. Duke Enoch stammered the girl's name, Lilith. It was indeed his daughter, but hadn't his daughter died at the age of 7? To get back his kidnapped daughter, Enoch Rubinstein had braved countless battlefields. When he learned of his daughter's death, his sword turned towards the emperor. It turned out his daughter possessed a hidden identity, and the emperor, having known this all along, hid her and used her power. The daughter, brainwashed by the emperor, began to kill indiscriminately. Enoch Rubinstein wanted to bring his daughter back, but he couldn't find a way. It was this person who stopped her. Reading up to this point, Enoch slammed the book shut, thinking, is this a children's fairy tale? Lilith, seeing Enoch stop reading, asked what was wrong. Enoch replied that it wasn't a happy ending, and that he thought they could stop reading. From now on, I'll pre-read before reading to you. This is really harmful content. I'm sorry, princess. Unexpectedly, Lilith said, but it's a happy ending regardless. Enoch was very surprised. What? Where's the happy ending? Lilith replied, if the princess hadn't been kidnapped, then the good king wouldn't have had to take revenge on the bad king, right? In the end, the good king eliminated the evil king, so everyone would be happy, right? Enoch asked, do you really think so? Even though the princess died? Lilith answered, there was no other way. That princess was brainwashed by the evil king. But regardless, the princess killed a lot of people. Enoch lay down dissatisfied. But because the princess died, it's not a happy ending. Lilith retorted, it is a happy ending. Enoch sat up, his chest heaving, and explained to his daughter, no, it's not. Listen, the protagonist is the kind king, right? The protagonist's beloved daughter died, right? So even if everyone else is happy, the protagonist isn't happy, right? If the protagonist isn't happy, then it's not a happy ending. Lilith, how could a father who lost his beloved daughter be happy? So it's not a happy ending. Lilith, listening to her father's words, thought to herself that the original story definitely had a happy ending. After Cheshire harmed Enoch Rubinstein's daughter, the story ended with a scene of a new, peaceful empire being born. So after the original story ended, what happened to her father? Living in a peaceful country built on his daughter's grave, was the protagonist happy? At this moment, she suddenly asked her father hesitantly, if father were that kind king, and I were the princess, how would father live after I died? Enoch hugged her tightly and asked softly, what do you mean, how would I live? I couldn't live. Did the kind king think the same when he thought the princess was dead? He didn't die immediately. Perhaps he planned to kill himself after taking revenge. Lilith asked in a panic, then what does that mean? What if father died too? Enoch laughed. When you have your own child, you'll understand. You'll feel the same way. If I miss my little princess, I would rather follow her. I couldn't live without my little princess. Lilith immediately protested loudly. No. Her agitated expression made Enoch laugh. Look at your face. Don't worry, it's just a fairy tale. I won't lose my little princess in the first place. Lilith thought, but if things go according to the original story, you were supposed to lose me. At this moment, Enoch continued proudly. Even if I lost you, I wouldn't be stupid enough to become the evil king's subordinate. I would rush in directly to save my princess. Lilith muttered under her breath, that wouldn't be so easy. Then she said aloud, Father, I have a question. All ability users must go to the battlefield when the Emperor orders it, right? Enoch nodded. Yes, that's right. Lilith asked again, but you said before that I don't have to go. Enoch replied with a smile, right? Our princess doesn't have to go. Lilith was further puzzled. Why? I'm your daughter, so I'm a powerful ability user, right? Shouldn't I go then? Enoch said with certainty, no, you don't have to go. I have my own methods. Lilith was very curious. What does that mean? Enoch held her and closed his eyes. Nothing. Anyway, I'm too sleepy. Lying in her father's arms, Lilith thought, even without hearing the answer, I can still guess your plan. You'll meet with the Emperor alone soon, and there's a 99.9% chance. You'll most likely apply for my exemption from military service. The card you'll reveal during negotiations with the Emperor is too obvious. From now on, you'll become an obedient dog, following the Emperor's orders without being able to object. The kind king had to become the evil king's subordinate because the protagonist had a weakness, and that was his daughter. Even if I wasn't kidnapped by the Emperor, you still wouldn't be free. You'll negotiate with the Emperor so that I won't be sent to the battlefield. The kind king will eventually become a pawn of the evil king. You'll fight in a meaningless war. Father, the protagonist is a righteous person. He hates the Empire's tyranny, such as wars of aggression. But I know you'd do anything for your princess. That's right. You're someone who would wield a sword for me. Lilith, if the protagonist isn't happy, then it's not a happy ending. Lilith, I couldn't live without my princess. Lilith thought, I was wrong to think that daughter was just a catalyst for the original story. Living as the Emperor's puppet, deciding on revenge, and ultimately succeeding in the rebellion. Every action you took had a purpose. And that purpose was me. The original story, which I thought definitely had a happy ending, turned out to be a clear tragedy for the protagonist who lost his purpose. After the original story ended, you probably would have followed me. So what I need to do is not only help you achieve a peaceful ending like in the original story, but I also have to survive. No matter what happens after the original story ends, I have to safely stay by your side. For the protagonist's happy ending. Enoch Rubinstein, Father, I could do anything for you too. In this world, the highest rank is Das, followed in descending order by Quarto, Septima, Octava, Noveno, and finally, the lowest rank is Dies. There is an entity overseeing ability users, divided into 6 ranks, Primavera. Primavera's existence is the source of magic, the closest existence to God, an omnipotent being. Therefore, a Prima is only born once per generation. Since the founding of the Empire, only the Pavilion Imperial family has produced Primas. That's the Emperor's rank. The 12th Prince's rank has been determined as Quarto. The Emperor was furious when he heard the news. Why wasn't a Prima born? The Emperor had 14 children so far, but not a single Prima. The absence of an ex-Prima was causing unrest among the populace. At this moment, the Emperor asked his subordinate, "You don't think it will never be born, do you?" The subordinate lowered his head and comforted him, saying, "Don't worry, Your Majesty. Your Majesty is still young and healthy, so you will surely give birth to the next Primavera." This person was the Emperor of the Pavilion Empire, Nicholas von Pavilion, age 48. 7 years ago, when Enoch left, the Emperor was furious. Enoch's absence was a huge loss of power for those who waited patiently for their time to come. If he hadn't been patient then, forcing Enoch to submit, he would have been long dead. And Primas, who consume life force instead of mana, have lifespans twice as long as ordinary people. The omnipotent Prima can brainwash talented individuals into loyalty, but this requires a significant amount of life force, especially when the target is someone as powerful as Enoch Rubinstein. The Emperor muttered angrily, "Does he know how much patience I've endured for the past 7 years?" Emperor Nicholas, who held the title of the Conqueror King, still had a few nations that were thorns in his side. He presumed Enoch had returned to his daughter's side. He chuckled, thinking, "Sir Enoch will soon bring me a wonderful return gift." The next morning, 2 maids came to Lilith's room and asked, "Miss will be going to the study soon." "Correct. I'll prepare your things." Mississippi Lilith nodded, sitting silently on her bed. She looked sadly at her legs. "Too short. I'm too short, and I haven't developed. If I continue to develop this slowly, my true identity will be discovered by everyone. I need to grow quickly. First, I must rescue Cheshire as planned, and then enter the Development Academy as soon as possible, because those with talent must go there. By receiving the Emperor's power, they can properly use their abilities. Only the Emperor can unlock the core within talented individuals, and I need to use my abilities as soon as possible. By using my abilities and consuming life force, I can grow like other people, and that way I'll be able to hide my identity. Just then, she heard the maids whispering. "Did you hear the rumor?" "What rumor?" "It was a failure again. They say the 12th Prince's rank is Quarto." "Oh, really? I thought it would be Primavera this time." Many people are saying that the gods have abandoned the Imperial family because there hasn't been a Primavera yet. No way. Maybe one will appear soon. It's strange. Until now, the first or second child of the Imperial family was always Primavera. That's right, no Primavera. Although there are many princes and princesses, there's still no crown prince. Is this the first time this has happened? The Prima is the one who holds absolute power in each generation. So far, Primas have always been born into the Imperial family without exception. Only a Prima, a descendant of the Emperor's bloodline, can become the crown prince. Hearing this, Lilith crossed her arms and cursed inwardly. "Damn Emperor, just try giving birth 100 times and see if any Prima is born in the Imperial family. There won't be a Primavera in this generation. The maids were still excitedly discussing. Surely a Primavera won't be born into another family, right? Lilith sat, listening without speaking, sneering inwardly. At that moment, the two maids returned, handing Lilith a very cute backpack. Miss, everything is ready. Look, the rabbit's face is so chubby, isn't it cute? Lilith was delighted, finding it adorable. The maids offered to carry her to the study, and Lilith nodded. Yes, I'd like that. She thought, it's time to begin Cheshire's rescue mission. I can't delay any longer. Suddenly, she called out to the maids. Sister, wait a moment. Where's the infirmary? The scene shifted to the doctor, still somewhat drowsy, blinking as he came out to see who it was. When he saw the person before him, he instantly woke up. Who is this? Could it be the princess? Lilith nodded. Yes, that's right. My name is Lilith. It's a pleasure to meet you, Flynn. The doctor asked in surprise. How do you know my name? I haven't had a chance to introduce myself. Lilith replied. She said Flynn is a very clever doctor. She said if I'm sick and go see Flynn, I'll get better right away. Lilith smiled triumphantly, then feigned fluster. Haha, yes, I'm indeed very capable. But are you here because you're not feeling well? Lilith smiled brightly, holding out the flowers in her hand. No, I just wanted to come and say hello. Here's a gift. The scent of spring is so lovely, so I picked some flowers from the garden. The doctor was touched. Thank you, princess. He hurriedly turned around, muttering to himself. The infirmary is a bit gloomy, but if I put these flowers in a vase, it'll look beautiful. Let me see a suitable vase. Just then Lilith spoke. By the way, Flynn, do you have any fairy tears here? The doctor paused. Fairy tears. Ah, do you mean redemption grass? Lilith immediately nodded. Yes, that's right. The doctor said, we have some here. Do you need some? Lilith replied. They say it's a very precious medicinal herb. Could I have some too? The doctor said, as a rare and mystical herb, redemption grass is exclusively controlled by the Imperial family to ensure limited circulation. It's also granted monthly to a few families permitted by the emperor. As a direct descendant of the Rubinstein family, you are certainly eligible. Mississippi Lilith replied cheerfully, Ah, I see. I read in a book that it's very good stuff. Could you give me some? I want to make tea for my father. The doctor was deeply moved. Oh my, what a sweet little angel. The princess wants to make tea for her father. Of course, I'll give you some. Please sign your name here. You're welcome to come again anytime. Lilith readily accepted and replied, Thank you. She quickly signed her name, muttering to herself, I'm ready. The next problem is, how do I sneak out? In spring, children need a guardian to go outside. If I ask to go out, I might be dragged right back inside. In that case, who has enough power to sneak me out and protect me while I'm out? Asterisk Jetty and June are out, my personal guards are out, and Sir Lewis, known as the Rubinstein, Private Legion's ace, is also out. The answer is... Asterisk just then, her two older brothers appeared, suggesting, let's go play after we finish studying. In Lilith's mind, she already had the answer to the previous question. My brothers. Those twins are talented. They graduated from the training academy and unlocked their abilities. Also, their rank is Das. In this family, they're the strongest after father. The first challenge was persuading the twins to leave. At that moment, the little girl complained while lying in bed, I'm too tired to play. I'm hungry. Hearing this, her brother suggested, then let's go to the dining hall. Lilith replied, the food there isn't tasty. Her brother scratched his head in confusion. Then what should we do? Is there anything you want to eat? Lilith slyly replied, there is, but not here. It's the food I ate when I lived in the old house with father. The two brothers nodded, discussing amongst themselves. I see. That must be commoner's food, right? Should we ask the chef to make it? Are you stupid? How would a noble family's chef know what commoners eat? Then what should we do now? Well, we can go out and eat, can't we? Lilith, shall we go to a commoner's restaurant? Hearing this, Lilith chuckled inwardly. This is going too smoothly. She pretended to ask, will the adults allow us to do that? Her brother nodded. You're right. If we tell father we're going to a commoner's restaurant, we'll get scolded severely. Her brother began to ponder for a moment. Lilith urged him in a cute voice, Brother, Lilith is hungry. Her brother immediately said indulgently, Oh, then let's sneak out. A moment later, Lilith crawled through the hole as her brother watched with concern. Lilith, are you okay? The only way to leave without being noticed by the guards, or maids, is through this brilliant plan. This is the plan Captain Theo came up with, and it's now being executed. The two brothers bickered again. Why didn't you make the hole bigger, Theo? You're so dumb. A bigger hole would be too obvious. At this point, Lilith was delighted. I successfully crawled through the dog hole and appeared before my two brothers. Her considerate brother dusted her off. All right, let's go, the three of us. Suddenly, just then, her brother felt unwell. Lilith asked in alarm, "What's wrong, brother? Are you all right?" Her brother clutched his head, saying, "Ah, no, I'm fine." Seeing this, his younger brother was also worried. "Is it happening again? Are you sure it's okay to go out like this? Why don't you go back and rest?" Her older brother smiled. "No, I'm really fine. Usually, after a headache like this, in about 5 days, it will happen." Lilith was startled, remembering, oh, right, Theo has a rare disease. So when he said it would happen in 5 days, he meant he was talking about a seizure, right? One of the twins, destined to die in the original story. His role: 1. A stepping stone for Chester's growth. 2. A way to stir the reader's hearts. His purpose is to gently heal Chester's heart, closed off after years of abuse, and then leave the stage after fulfilling his mission. The author is too cruel. Theo's illness is called mana clash, a rare disease where divine energy and magical energy clash within him, causing periodic seizures. Theo will die in the spring of the second year, after he's knighted at 16. In short, he's living on borrowed time. At that moment, Theo asked with a smile, "Lilith, shall we go now?" "Lilith, what's wrong with your face? Are you hurt?" Lilith was startled and regained her composure. "Not at all." She thought sadly, "Brother, please stop being so kind to me." Although this disease is considered incurable, a method to combat mana clash is actually recorded in an ancient document. It mentions something called the saint's heart. Of course, this is a metaphorical phrase, and no one knows exactly what it refers to. Eventually, Cheshire figures out its meaning. After Theo dies, Cheshire, knowing it's pointless, becomes obsessed with deciphering the ancient text. He eventually finds the saint's heart and places it on Theo's grave. Cheshire in the original story went through so much to find it. There's no way I can find it that easily. Wait a minute, am I an idiot? I already know what it is. Lilith, a devoted reader who had perused the original story multiple times, became ecstatic. Save him. I can do it. He endures so much pain with every seizure, but now he doesn't have to suffer through them anymore. Seeing his sister like this, Theo asked, "Lilith, what did you just say?" Lilith, excitedly waving her hands, lost in her deductions, suggested, "Take me outside and buy me something pretty." Theo kindly agreed, "Of course, I'll buy you anything." Soon, they arrived in town together. Lilith pointed excitedly, "I want to go there too." Willie Duncan's general store, run by a former magic swordsman and his attendant. The sign looked a little unreliable, but among the shops in this area, it was the largest. "They might have it. I'm sure they'll have the saint's heart." At that moment, the shopkeeper cheerfully asked, "You look like nobles. What brings you here?" The two brothers hesitantly looked at each other. Only Lilith was busy searching with her eyes. She quickly found her target. "That's it." Lilith pointed at an object. "It's so pretty. I want that." All three men were stunned. Lilith exclaimed with delight, "The shimmering purple light. It's so mesmerizing. It really looks like the stars in the night sky." The shopkeeper chuckled. "Haha, young lady, that's a monster core. It's taken from the bodies of slain monsters. It's quite unsuitable as a toy for a noble lady." Lilith stated firmly, "I'm going to buy it." Her brother immediately refused. "No, absolutely not. It's dangerous." Lilith asked, puzzled why. "How is it dangerous?" Her brother explained, "Magical energy constantly leaks from the core. If you carry it around with you, you'll become addicted to it. Only those who can control magical energy can handle such a thing." The shopkeeper chimed in, "Yes, that's right. Even this isn't made with ordinary glass. It's made with special barrier glass, which has the effect of partially sealing the magical energy." Lilith put her hands on her hips and said confidently, "It's all right. I can handle it too." Her brother asked skeptically, "What are you talking about? You haven't even been to the training academy yet, squirt." Lilith affirmed, "I'm telling you, I can handle it." Her brother was firm with her. "No means no. Stop whining." Lilith, pouting, thought, "There are 5 days until the next seizure. If I don't get it now, I won't have another chance to get it without raising suspicion. I know how to avoid the pain. I don't want him to suffer through that. No choice. It's time to use my ultimate move." She threw herself on the ground, declaring, "If you don't buy me this, I won't leave." It was time to use the tantra privilege that only children could get away with. Moments later, item purchased successfully. 6 glass-encased low-grade monster cores were successfully obtained by Lilith. The two brothers were still whispering to each other. Mother will kill you. Don't use such vulgar language. Lilith said happily to them. Thank you, brother. It's so beautiful. Theo asked her, do you like it? Lilith beamed. Yes, my brother is the best. Leon muttered from the side. He's been had. Soon, the three arrived at Rico's restaurant on 13th Street in the Valentine district. The two brothers asked suspiciously, Lilith, are you serious? Did you really eat things like this when you lived in Xenon? Are they really that delicious? Lilith affirmed, very delicious. She thought to herself, this is the Rico's restaurant that father visited in the original story. Looks like I found it without any trouble. My memory is the best. Her brother raised his hand to call the owner. He requested, give me everything on the menu. I'll pay double, so please take care with the cooking. My little sister is very excited. The owner smiled. Yes, I understand. Unexpectedly, just then Lilith suddenly called out, excuse me. Hearing this, her brother quietly scolded her. Hey, Lilith. Hey, we shouldn't speak loudly to commoners when we're out. Theo said, Leon, don't be so strict. Leon reasoned that Lilith hadn't adjusted well yet. She needed to adapt quickly. If she made a mistake in front of their grandfather later, she would be scolded. At that moment, the little girl took out a gold coin from her pocket and handed it to the owner. It turned out this place was disguised as an ordinary restaurant. Lilith knew this wasn't on the menu. A secret intelligence guild called Red Kite. Lilith asked, using a specific term, if they had pickled herring. Facing this little girl, the owner was a bit surprised. Then he lowered his head and said, we don't sell that dish individually, but we'll prepare it if you request it. Do you have a specific recipe you'd like? Lilith replied cheerfully, yes. Can I chat with you while you cook? So the two went into the kitchen together. The owner went down to the basement and shouted, Rico, you have a visitor. Lilith was led to her room. The door soon creaked open slightly. A man who deeply resented those with abilities, nobles, and the royal family. Rico, the head of the Red Kite Intelligence Guild. Wearing a mask, he smiled eerily at Lilith. Please have a seat. Lilith said, thank you, and sat down. She sensed the atmosphere is scary, then sighed. Please wait a moment. I'm a little nervous, you see. Rico asked Lilith how she knew about this place. Lilith coyly asked back, are you curious? I can answer, but principle number 1 of trading, you have to pay for information. If you're curious, then give me useful information. Not money, but information equivalent to the information I'm looking for. Rico replied, I see. Then I don't need to know. I charge up front, so let's get straight to the point. If you need any information, please pay the transaction fee first. Lilith immediately asked, Duke Enoch Rubinstein, who disappeared 7 years ago, has returned to the capital. Did you know that? Rico replied, I know. Lilith continued, smiling, so you already knew? Then let me tell you one more thing. I'm his daughter, 7-year-old Lilith Rubinstein. Rico nodded. I know that too. Are you here to joke around? Lilith quickly explained, no, not at all. Actually, I'm not here to buy information. I'm here to ask you for a favor regarding information I already know. For example, you have a son you're hiding from Archaeonics. You must be surprised. This is quite exclusive information. Rico nodded. Yes, I am indeed surprised. The 7-year-old daughter of Duke Rubinstein, who lived her whole life in Xenon, unaware of her identity, came to the capital for the first time about 4 days ago. So I'm curious how you learned that fact, and I'm also curious about your purpose in seeing me. I also heard that the tower personally came to test your abilities because you're a gifted individual. Lilith was a little surprised. He really does know everything. She didn't beat around the bush and said directly, anyway, I want to save that child. The mark is secret. I just told you. Deliver it anonymously to anyone who can save your son. Rico asked back, so you need a messenger. Who's the recipient? Lilith replied, my father. Rico asked incredulously, excuse me, your father? You mean Duke Enoch Rubinstein? Lilith nodded. Yes, my father only knows his face right now, so it will take time to find him. My father returned to the capital after a long time, so he's not very familiar with how things work here, and he has to deal with family matters, and soon he'll have to return to the Knight's Order. Rico rested his chin on his hand, amazed. A 7-year-old couldn't have come to see me on her own. I'm not sure if this is the Duke's instruction. Lilith immediately replied, no, I came alone. My father doesn't know anything. Rico chuckled. Yes, of course. That's why you're asking me to send the information anonymously, because he doesn't know where to start. You could tell him yourself, so why go through all this trouble? Lilith was silent for a moment, then said, after telling him, I'd have to explain how I know all this. Rico became even more interested and laughed. It seems you have a little secret, young lady. One you can't easily reveal, but you also don't want to hide from your father. Lilith replied with satisfaction, Indeed. So I'm looking for an alternative. Simply put, Rico responded, because it's a bit suspicious, right? He also thought for a moment, then said, I understand. Should I spread the news about Onyx's offspring, an illegitimate child, to Duke Enoch Rubinstein? Lilith replied excitedly, yes. That's enough. At this point, Rico continued, then in exchange for delivering this message to the Duke, tell me what your true identity is. I want to know more about you and how you discovered this information. Lilith muttered to herself, thinking, isn't this all for profit? If you hide your name and relay this information, he'll tell you my secret. He probably doesn't know much about me. I've been in business for a while now. Hearing this, Rico couldn't help but laugh. Lilith continued, I'll have many more secrets to share with my father in the future. I brought a gift, which means we'll continue to trade in the future. Rico immediately said, I'm sorry, but I only trade in information. Lilith said with certainty, it's not money. I said I don't have anything I don't know. I know you, Rico. I've already made quite a bit of money. Just open it. You'll be satisfied. Rico slowly opened it, then asked, what is this? Lilith immediately said, it's a panacea redemption. It can cure all diseases. Rico covered his head and scoffed. Until now, I've always been left behind, but this is the first time I've been able to keep up. What are you planning? How did the Duke find out my secret? Answer me. Lilith said, trembling, my father doesn't know anything, so calm down and sit down. Let's talk. Just talk. I'll handle it myself, so you don't need to help me. At this moment, Rico suddenly cut his hand, letting the blood drip. Then he suddenly slammed his hand on the table, startling Lilith. Rico asked again, you know what this is, right? That's why you brought it out. Those damned royals hoard this stuff. Even hundreds of millions can't buy it. Rico said, healing his wound with the redemption Lilith had just given him. Your family receives special favors, but if you trade it carelessly outside, you won't escape punishment either. Lilith scratched her head, feigning ignorance. Is that so? Well, Rico, as long as you use it carefully and don't get caught, it'll be fine. Well, if everything's done, I'll be taking my leave. Rico's voice froze. Lilith, please stop there. He slowly walked towards her. Lilith screamed in fear. Wait, you don't need to show me your face. Rico whispered, please look at me. Lilith opened one eye and asked, you're not going to kill me for no reason, are you? Rico replied, I never break the rules when I make a deal. I always return something equivalent to what I receive. Behind the mask was a handsome young man. He exchanged his face with Lilith for her secret. Today's transaction forged a bond between the two. The sky outside had turned to dusk. Two people's whispers echoed. You're not like yourself at all. Rico, what are you thinking? Why let that little girl see your face? Rico asked, the Rubinstein children are our people. Who are they? The master replied, the two J sisters. Rico said, pass the information about Onyx's offspring, an illegitimate child, to Enoch Rubinstein. The master asked in surprise, Rico, are you serious? Lilith nodded. You know how important redemption is to me. The master replied, I know, but we must be careful. Who is he? Even your sister, Annie, knows what kind of man he is. He even held a grand ceremony to send that girl off. The Duke must be planning something. Have you forgotten how your sister suffered because of magic? Rico responded, think about that little girl's request. Just pass on Count Onyx's secret to her father. That's why she came to me. He recalled Lilac's expression, saying, one dose of the antidote isn't enough, is it? Because you need more. So trust me. We're friends. Anyway, Rico chuckled softly, then continued, she wants to give me the antidote, so I'll trust her this time. I don't know if that will actually happen, though. The savior I've been waiting for. At this moment, Lilith was lying happily in bed, thinking finding Rico was a great idea. Rico had told Lilith, if you go home, we'll contact you through the guild members stationed at Duke Rubinstein's mansion. Lilith reasoned internally, it's probably one of the servants. If I want to stay in contact with Rico, it would be easier if he became my private bodyguard. I've already become quite close with Jetty and John. At this moment, the maid came over and complimented her. Oh, our young miss draws so beautifully. Is this a jellyfish? Have you seen a jellyfish? Miss Lilith. Lilith explained, this is my father. The maid exclaimed in surprise, really? Oh, now that I look at it again, it does resemble the Duke quite a bit. Miss, may I draw a picture of this? Lilith nodded in agreement. Yes. So the maid quickly bent down and started drawing, making rustling sounds. Wow, your drawing is amazing. Lilith praised the maid. Who is this? The maid replied, she's my friend. Her name is Raquel. The short-haired maid also suddenly appeared, saying, she's my friend too. Raquel is also here, working as a maid. She's a descendant of Onyx. Lilith thought in surprise, why is Marquis Onyx here? A thought flashed through Lilith's mind. Could it be these two? She couldn't help but call out, sisters. Sisters, could you two please help me out in the future? The two maids immediately replied, of course, miss. Elsewhere, Enoch was sitting quietly, thinking, a week ago, I met a boy on the island. It's become commonplace for people to be treated as lowly on the island, but I was particularly concerned about that boy. However, he's Marquis Onyx's illegitimate child, *. The anonymous paper only had the letter L on it, which left Enoch extremely perplexed. I'm not sure who it is, but if the information about the boy being abused is true, I must find him as soon as possible. Damn it, why Onyx of all people? Coincidentally, Enoch didn't have any close relationship with Marquis Onyx. He thought to himself, I need to find a way to pay a visit naturally soon. Just then, the door opened and a familiar voice called out, Father. Enoch quickly put the letter away. My princess, my dear, are your lessons over? Lilith cheerfully replied, yes. Today was my first art class. It was very interesting. The teacher told me about famous sculptors and their artwork. Did you know this? This is a piece of art created by a sculptor named Lindell. It's very famous, called Heaven's Gate. It looks so beautiful. I really want to meet that sculptor in person, but I guess that's impossible, right? Hearing this, Enoch asked, why not? If it's a famous artwork, it should be in the Sinking Art Museum, right? I can take you there. Lilith pouted. No, it's not there. My teacher asked, but they mentioned Marquis Onyx. He's the one who bought it. Enoch thought in surprise. Are they saying that artwork is at his house? He told Lilith happily, you can see it. Lilith pretended to be excited. Really? But how? Enoch replied, I'll try to contact him. Let's go visit. The scene quickly shifted to a man bowing in welcome. Duke Rubinstein. Enoch said politely, despite the sudden request, thank you for your warm welcome. My daughter really wants to see that artwork. Marquis Onyx said, it's no trouble at all. I'm delighted to receive your message. This is my wife and our son, Jonathan. His wife dipped into a curtsy, and the child bowed politely as well. It's a pleasure to meet you, Duke Rubinstein. I'm Jonathan Onyx. Lilith inwardly cursed. So it's you, the infamous Mr. X. Jonathan stepped forward and shook Lilith's hand. It's an honor to meet such a lovely young miss. Lilith responded with feigned sweetness. The honor is all mine. Enoch chimed in from behind. My daughter seems to have taken a liking to your son. Lilith groaned internally. Not at all. Marquis Onyx chuckled, furthering the misunderstanding. What an honor. The two of you truly look well matched. The mother instructed, treat the princess well. We'll be seeing each other often in the future. We never know what the future holds, do we? At that moment, Jonathan stepped forward and suggested, if you don't mind, I could give the princess a tour of the mansion's artwork. Lilith nodded. Yes, I'd really like to see Heaven's Gate. Marquis Onyx said, all right, Jonathan. Sounds good. I've had the servants trained to enhance the experience of this place. Lilith politely approached the servants and said, hello. Jonathan thought to himself, there's no need to greet the servants like that. Unfazed, Lilith said to them, please take good care of me. I'm here to see Heaven's Gate. Please show me the way. The servants happily agreed. Yes, miss. The two walked hand in hand, seemingly engaging in some sort of secret transaction. Lilith thought, I wonder if the room's location is written on this paper. Well, let's go inside and see the painting. Jonathan stood to the side, thinking smugly, as father said, this is a golden opportunity. I must impress the Duke somehow this time. My rank has risen to the Chester level, so interpersonal relationships are crucial. At that moment, Lilith suddenly exclaimed, amazing. Jonathan immediately began to explain, Miss, this is the meaning behind this artwork. Vidin is a masterpiece contemporary to Lindell. Before he could finish his sentence, Lilith had run off elsewhere. Jonathan was extremely annoyed, cursing inwardly. Damn it, I keep getting ignored. I even showed her Heaven's Gate, which she wanted to see, but she doesn't appreciate it at all. If I had known it would be like this, I wouldn't have been so polite. I'm not one to appreciate art, but I have to look after her too. Goodness, no. Calm down, calm down. This girl can change my life. With that thought, he forced a smile. Miss, shall we move on to the next exhibition room? But when he turned around, the young miss was nowhere to be seen, leaving Jonathan seething with rage. Damn it, what a stubborn, disobedient girl. Lilith at this moment was following the instructions. Annex building, 3rd floor, a side door at the end of the exhibition hall. That door leads to a secret passage underground. The child is in the last room on the 2nd basement floor. At this moment, Chester was lying on the dirty floor, trembling. Whispers echoed in his ears. Mother is just tired of running away like this. It would be better to die together. Chester. The nightmare startled the boy, and he abruptly sat up. If you approach the Duke, Father won't let you live. It would be a disgrace if he knew of your existence. Chester muttered to himself, if that's the case, then am I destined to die in the end? Really? Is there no other way to escape this hell besides death? Can I ever feel such warmth again? If God is real, please send me a little angel. Please take me away from this hell. I want to live. Just then, the door in front of Chester was flung open by Lilith. The little girl, resolute like a small angel, declared, Chester, I'll get you out of here. Chester asked in astonishment, how did you get here? Lilith froze, unsure how to answer. But then she caught sight of Chester's pitifully bruised eyes, and she hesitantly approached him. We have to hurry. She thought to herself, I was wrong. So foolish. I should have disregarded everything when I first saw you and had Father bring me here to find you. Every minute, every second here must have been hell for you. While the past week, for me, has been filled with happiness. Tears streamed down Lilith's face. I'm so sorry. Chester, confused as to why she was apologizing, asked, why are you crying? Lilith reached up and wiped her tears. Then she extended her hand to Chester. Let's go, Chester. Chester thought in astonishment. She wants me to go outside, to leave this place. Who is she? How could she take me away from this hell? Who are you? Lilith replied, Lilith. Chester asked seriously, I'm not asking for your name. Lilith said sincerely, I'll explain after we get out safely. Now, let's get out of here. Please, trust me just this once. Wherever we go, it'll be better than this hell. Chester listened quietly to her words, and he felt the same way. Even if it wasn't heaven, it would certainly be better than this hell. I didn't think you'd take my hand so easily. He shyly placed his hand in Lilith's. You told me to. Lilith nodded. You'll come with me, right? Truly relieved, she smiled. I'm really sorry I'm late. From now on, no one can hurt you. I'll beat them up with this cane. Chester looked puzzled. How can you? You're much smaller than me. Gasps echoed through the old hallway. Lilith complained wearily in her mind, Lewis, save me. With these short legs of mine, I have to climb all the way up from the second basement floor. I'm really tired. Are we there yet? Seeing Chester suddenly stop, she asked worriedly, what's wrong? Is someone there? Chester turned his head and replied, no, but from here on out, there will be servants. Lilith said nonchalantly, it's okay. Even if we get caught, it's not a big deal. But as long as we don't get caught, everything's fine. Come on. Chester looked at the girl in front of him in amazement. Lilith remembered the key will be placed on the second window frame in the annex hallway. She quickly found it, but then she realized with a pang of sadness that she was too short. Her hand couldn't reach. At that moment, Chester stepped forward and asked, do you need to put on the window frame? Lilith nodded. Yes, that's right. Chester easily helped place the key. They worked together perfectly, continuing to run, the exit now within sight. On the other side, Jonathan was stamping his foot in frustration. No, where did she go? Lilith and Chester stopped abruptly, unexpectedly running into Jonathan ahead. He exclaimed in surprise, what? This jerk, how could he? Lilith hid behind Chester and said, oh, hello. Shouldn't we hurry? Hurry back to the room. Lilith pushed Chester. Run. Jonathan immediately instructed the servants. Catch him. Catch that jerk. Quick. Lilith figured she had to seize this opportunity, and she ran off with the servants. Unexpectedly, Jonathan grabbed her. Princess, please stay here. Lilith clutched her neck dramatically, crying out, choking. Jonathan immediately panicked. I'm sorry, but wait. Can you talk to me? Lilith thought, if Chester wants to escape, now's the time, hurry. She suddenly kicked Jonathan's leg again, and then she made a scene, thud, falling to the ground. She cursed inwardly, that cruel villain treating a child like that. Go, keep running, with the same ruthlessness as in the original story. I told him to leave me, go. It wasn't easy for the servants to chase after Jonathan. Lilith gasped, so fast. Jonathan swung his fist at Chester, who had returned to the original spot, and missed. Can't you go back to your room? He missed his target and fell down himself. Seeing Jonathan return, Lilith scolded angrily. Idiot, I told you to go first. You can't run away with me anyway. To Lilith's astonishment, what? What is this? Can he teleport? Chester told her, let's run. Lilith thought in astonishment, what is this? That's right, it's not teleportation. In the original story, all the abilities were concentrated on the two main characters. According to Chester's fifth setting, Surprisingly, this rogue character can manipulate time density. If he wills it, his opponent's movements will appear in slow motion. Even my father and Rico, how could they lose with such powerful characters on both sides? Haha, move aside, my job is done, all that's left is a little. Meanwhile, Marquis Onyx set down his teacup. There were a lot of rumors back then. Those who didn't know the Duke's circumstances said a lot of things. Is that so? But any parent with a child would surely understand the Duke's feelings upon welcoming the princess. 7 years ago, Enoch politely replied, I understand. Thank you for your understanding. He thought to himself, there's no trace of a child here at all. Perhaps he's in a remote, isolated room, or perhaps something has gone wrong. But could that child be the boy I saw earlier? Marquis Onyx replied awkwardly, yes, that's right. Our family has always had very few children. Enoch inwardly assessed, a rather predictable response. I should get closer to that hidden room. So he stood up and suggested, I could also take a look around the exhibition room, couldn't I? Marquis Onyx gestured politely. I shall personally guide you. Just then, Lilith's panicked voice rang out. Father, accompanied by Jonathan's voice, wait a minute, princess, please wait. Lilith, holding Chester's hand, arrived and waved. Father, do you remember this boy? It seems the Count invited him too. Marquis Onyx's face paled when he saw Chester. Yes, but why are you here? Enoch thought, shouldn't you have kept him well hidden? A 7-year-old child found him. Lilith feigned innocence. Father, the Marquis's house is really big, isn't it? There's so many rooms. I wandered around and ran into this boy. Enoch blinked, looking at the boy, noting his current extremely pitiful and tattered state. Marquis Onyx panicked, gritting his teeth. Damn it. Listening to the father and daughter's conversation. Where did you meet this boy? In a room in the basement. But it seems the Marquis hasn't cleaned the basement. His room was dark and smelly, and there were even rats. It was disgusting. Hearing this, Enoch stood up. All right, Marquis Onyx hesitantly began. Duke, I mean that boy. That boy actually looks like... Lilith interrupted. A lot like you, Marquis. This is the Marquis's illegitimate child he's been hiding. Enoch said, Marquis, let's talk privately. A while later, Lilith and Chester sat on chairs. She thought, Father will take care of everything properly, right? So that's why Raquel gave me the ointment, the one that came with the note. She nudged Chester. Lower your head. Chester also spoke up. Your lips are chapped. Lilith wagged her finger. It's okay, it doesn't hurt much. Lilith made a gesture to apply the ointment to Chester's bruised body. He obediently let her apply the ointment. Lilith said, thank you for not abandoning me earlier and even taking me with you. But why did you keep getting hit when you could clearly dodge? Didn't you want to talk to me? At this, Chester replied, if I dodged, would anything have changed? It would only have made them angrier. Even if I ran away, there's nowhere to go. If I don't want to starve on the streets, I have no choice but to endure and live in that house, even if I get beaten. Lilith realized with a jolt that no matter how outstanding his abilities, he was still only 11 years old. And without any legal standing in this wretched empire, it was clearly difficult to survive without a guardian. She said softly, you're right. I'm sorry. I said something very foolish. Chester asked, is your father Duke Rubenstein? Lilith nodded. Yes, that's right. Did you know? Chester replied, I heard it from Jonathan. He mentioned being on good terms with your father. Lilith chuckled. That's absurd. That's just wishful thinking on his part. My father must be crazy to be on good terms with someone who hits children. My father brought me here today because he wanted to show me the exhibited artwork. But the real reason I came here today wasn't for the artwork. It was for you. I came to save you. A friend told me you were here. Raquel, Chester suddenly asked, why are you looking for me? Do you know who I am? Lilith asked, a flicker of panic in her voice. What's wrong? Don't you remember me? We met last time. You remember everything, but are pretending not to, aren't you? Hey, Chester, I've been thinking about you ever since then. I wanted to see you again. Chester asked why. Lilith sighed and replied, well, it's that simple. Anyone can like someone for no reason. I really like you. At these words, Chester's face went blank. Then he said, now I understand. You think of me as a toy, right? So you'll feed me and let me sleep at your house, right? Lilith froze, retorting, what are you talking about? How can a person be a toy? I'll be friends with you. Chester turned away, replying, I'm a duke's daughter. How can we be friends? Lilith stated firmly, we can. Don't you like that? Chester answered in a low voice, no. Just then, the door behind them opened. Enoch walked over, calling for his daughter. Lilith ran towards him happily, shouting, Father. Enoch stared at the boy in front of him, making the boy extremely nervous, and he couldn't help but gulp. Enoch said to the two children, let's go home. They soon returned to the castle. In front of Lilith's room, Enoch gestured for the two children to be quiet. I'll go talk to your grandfather first, and then come back. Until then, be quiet and don't let anyone know. At that moment, her two older brothers also happened to appear. They asked curiously, "Who is this child?" Lilith replied excitedly, "Brothers, say hello to him. He's Chester." Enoch smiled from behind them. "Hello, princess. From today onwards, Lilith's friend will be staying here. His name is Chester." One brother asked in surprise, "What? He's staying here? Which noble family does he belong to?" Enoch replied, "He's a commoner. That's all." The two brothers stared at the newcomer, their gazes making Chester stiffen, quickly turning away to avoid their eyes. Enoch spoke again. "I'll talk to your grandfather about Lilith's friend staying here and come back later. So until then, don't tell anyone and play quietly." Leon glanced at Lilith holding Chester's hand, then hurriedly pulled her away, asking, "Hey, Squirt, you said you were going to catch spiders with me today, right?" Lilith nodded happily. "Yes. Chester, are you coming too, brother?" Leon asked her jealously, "Weren't we planning to do it together?" Lilith immediately replied, "But Chester can come too." She thought, "This is strange. Why is Leon acting like this?" In the original story, when they met, they were supposed to become close. Why are they so hostile now? Theo smiled politely and asked, "Shouldn't we greet each other?" "They said your name is Chester. I'm Theo Anthers, 12 years old." As he spoke, Theo's expression suddenly froze. Lilith asked curiously, "What's wrong, brother?" Theo replied, "Oh, it's nothing." Leon crossed his arms, saying dismissively, "He smells." Lilith said in surprise, "Huh? I don't smell anything." These unintentional words made Chester unconsciously lower his head. At this moment, Enoch appeared behind him and patted the boy's shoulder. "All right, Chester, come with me and take a bath. You two play with Lilith first." At this, Lilith turned around, asking Leon with some annoyance, "Brother, what happened between you and Chester? You keep staring at him with scary eyes and saying he smells." Leon replied, "Well, he does smell." Lilith disagreed, "But it's not right to say it out loud like that." Leon angrily asked, "What does that have to do with anything?" "I'm only saying it because he actually stinks." Theo mediated between the two, saying, "Both of you, stop it. It's all right, Lilith. It's nothing. Leon talks to everyone like that." Lilith pouted, "That's a bad habit. Don't be like that to Chester." Leon angrily asked Lilith, "Hey, are you actually taking his side now?" Lilith asked blankly, "What are you talking about? What do you mean by taking his side?" Leon angrily replied, "You said you were going to see the artwork, and then you suddenly brought a friend home. Is he really going to live here?" Lilith nodded. "Yes, Chester has nowhere to go. If you have a problem, you should talk to me." "Well, go on, brother." Leon angrily brushed past her, shouting, "I don't know." The two siblings stood frozen in place. Why did this happen in the end? Earlier, 3 had said to Enoch, "In that case, if the princess gets bored later, or that boy is no longer useful, then make sure to handle it cleanly. Don't let any absurd story spread. Nobles like us, you know how important reputation is." Enoch silently looked at Chester's injured body. The sound of running water was very relaxing. Enoch laughed heartily. "It's been so long since I've done this. My daughter really doesn't like it when I make her bathe with me. She's growing up so fast. So, since last year, she's been bathing by herself." Chester asked in surprise, "Did you two used to bathe together?" Enoch nodded. "Yes." He thoughtfully washed Chester's hair. Chester suddenly addressed him, "Sir, didn't you say you were just going to kill me?" Enoch asked in surprise, "What?" Chester replied, "I know everything. I've only survived this long thanks to your daughter. I've seen many commoners who were brought home to live with nobles. No matter what, if they become disliked, they're kicked out and killed. I have one thing to ask you. Although I know it's inconvenient, please give me a little compensation when I'm old enough to find work outside. I'll leave as soon as possible and live quietly, without attracting attention." Enoch was surprised, thinking, "You've been preparing those words for a long time, haven't you? You're just an 11-year-old child." He addressed Chester. "A child doesn't need to work. I didn't bring you here to pay you or order you around, and not to please my daughter. If you have somewhere to go, I'll let you leave." Chester asked hesitantly, "Why are you being so nice to me?" Enoch replied, "Well, I suppose even if it wasn't you, I couldn't ignore it. Neither I nor my daughter could. Even so, if you still feel uncomfortable or suspicious of me, do you have anything you want to ask me?" "Elsewhere," grandfather said in a low voice, "I understand. Go out." Enoch asked in surprise, "That's it?" Grandfather asked in return, "What more do you want?" Enoch replied, "No. After disappearing for 7 years and causing so much trouble, now you come back and say some hurtful things, but you agree so easily. Still, I'm glad you can look at your actions objectively. I was worried and prepared to persuade you, thinking you would object." Grandfather replied, "You say persuade, but in reality, you would still do what you wanted, wouldn't you? Because I don't want meaningless arguments. I told you to decide for yourself. Truly, you've become much more tolerant, haven't you? When Enoch was young, we argued often. It was so difficult to make your son, who always questioned the class system, understand. Fortunately, Enoch reconciled and eventually grew up according to the rules. However, he never truly understood the absurdity of the class system and the aristocratic society full of self-importance. It was just a child's dutiful obedience to his father. Grandfather continued, "I've always felt guilty about that. I still regret it deeply, forcing my child to act according to my will. That's what I truly regret. I shouldn't have done that. If I had known the result would be 7 years of disappearance." Hearing his father say this, Enoch smiled happily. "I'm more grateful than anyone for your decision back then. If I had been more stubborn and actually won against you, wow, that would have been terrible. Our princess wouldn't be in this world. Thank you, father. Truly, ever since Lilith was born, my world has changed. I felt for the first time that life was worth living. Watching her grow every day, I understood what happiness is. I also want to create a better world for her, although it's not an easy task." Grandfather interrupted, "There's nothing you can't do. I'm old now, and all that's left is to step into the grave. So I won't interfere with what you want to do anymore. It's not too late. Do anything you want, even if you betray the family or ruin everything. This old man won't stop you." Hearing his father say this, Enoch was deeply moved, and then both father and son laughed loudly. Ha! Ha! Lilith thought, "Is this a buff of the main character? The drawing skill is really outstanding. Who could look at a comic book and create such a surreal jellyfish? At least buff it reasonably. I'm not the main character, so I really feel sorry for myself." Chester asked Lilith, "Why are you hiding it? Everything is so clear, but you said you were going to draw a jellyfish. Why didn't you draw it?" Lilith asked, "Isn't this a jellyfish?" Chester asked back, "Isn't that your father?" Lilith was overjoyed. "Yeah, it's like my father." Chester nodded again in confirmation. "Yes." Lilith was touched. "Oh my gosh, that's right. My drawing, the one everyone kept saying looked like a jellyfish. Haha, what a relief. So, can I give this drawing to father?" Chester remembered Enoch's words, "My daughter is very talented, so she'll be going to the training center soon. I'm worried about letting her go alone, but if you go with her, I'll feel more at ease." Chester immediately refused. "I can't go because I don't have an identity." Lilith smiled and replied, "Don't worry. I'll be your guarantor, and then you can register now." Chester was surprised. "What? Why? Such a high-ranking person, called a noble above all other nobles. Truly a respectable person. Why are you being so nice to me?" Maybe it's because of her, the one deeply loved by father. At that moment, Chester asked, "Do you like your father?" Lilith was surprised. Why ask that all of a sudden? Since he's my father, of course I like him. Looking at Chester's face, she thought, or maybe not. She continued thoughtfully, "Well, my father is someone everyone likes, so I like him too." "Well, my father is great and kind, right?" Chester nodded. "Yes." Lilith asked again, "Then, why don't you become my father's son?" Chester asked in surprise, "What?" Lilith crossed her arms. "You really are a bad father's son. Just because someone gave birth to you doesn't mean they're really a father. Your place should be like this." Seeing Chester's expression, Lilith asked again, "Don't believe me. My father will definitely accept you as family." Chester said, "You don't have to do this. I don't need a family. I've already drawn 10 pictures. Can I sleep now?" Seeing Chester get up, Lilith nodded slightly. "Oh yes." Chester asked, "Where's the servant's room?" Lilith looked puzzled. "Why the servant's room?" So the two children lay side by side. Lilith said cheerfully, "Good night." So it was Chester who was forced into bed. Lilith stared at the person next to her. She thought, "He seems to be sleeping soundly. You shouldn't wake up, right?" Lilith gently applied ointment to Chester's face. The wounds where she applied it were healing. Then she silently stared at the boy again. Recalling Chester's earlier words, "I don't need a family at all," she thought, "Even if he says that, I know Chester longs for the love of a family more than anyone. Abandoned by his mother and father. Abused by his father. Listen, Chester, I'm going to tell you a special secret that belongs only to you. You are the main character of this world. The main character always faces trials, but no matter what the trial, it will eventually pass. So that you don't suffer too much, I will help you, and then I will definitely become your family." Soon, Lilith fell asleep, breathing evenly. Only Chester, lying next to her, remained awake. He thought, what a strange child. Really strange. Saving someone completely unrelated to her. I thought it was just a noble's whim toward a commoner. Yes, just like a toy that people throw away after getting tired of playing with it. I've seen many commoners catch the attention of nobles. However, I'm glad there's a place to lie down and I won't starve for a while. Unless I want to die at the hands of my biological father or die somewhere else, I'll take advantage of this noble young lady's temporary concern. I will become your family. Why did she say that? Strange. I don't believe you. If you're going to abandon me, don't be so nice to me. Soon, the door opened again. Enoch walked in and covered Chester with a blanket, thinking, no, you should share the blanket. Why is our princess sleeping alone? This child is good at drawing. Isn't he? Let me see, Lilith's. Is this a jellyfish? Not a jellyfish. It's me. It has eyes and a nose. Ha. He chuckled as he saw the words. This isn't father. Good night, our princess. Enoch gently kissed his little daughter's forehead. The next day, Lilith sat overlooking the courtyard. She noticed Chester sitting alone on a chair. She sighed inwardly. He must be bored. I wish I could play with him while I study. Oscar lay languidly in a chair. So boring. Lilith pouted. Then don't come. Oscar replied, I promise to hold a special class every week, and I can't break a promise. Lilith thought, he looks bored. Should I ask a question? She took out her notebook. I don't know this. Can you explain it to me? Oscar immediately saw through a ruse. It's not that you don't know. Nonsense. You already know everything. Don't you find it boring? Lilith replied, I don't know everything. Oscar responded, yeah, if you say so. You'll be going to the training academy soon, right? Enrollment is mandatory at 9, but anyone can enter from 7. When's your birthday? Lilith answered, May 19th. Oscar replied, less than a month away. You'll probably go see your mother, right? Lilith asked, surprised mother. Why? Oscar asked with a smile, didn't your father tell you? Lilith thought, I've never given it much thought. Father always tried to cover it up or ignore it. In the original story, it only said the daughter was already dead. Not a single word mentioned Enoch Rubinstein's wife. I've only really thought about it now. Mother, Lilith asked, does the master of the magic tower know my mother? Oscar nodded. Of course. She's quite famous. Lilith asked curiously, what kind of person is she? Oscar chuckled. You want to know, judging by your reaction just now. It seems like this is the first time you've heard of your mother. Father too. Even the people in this house. What reason should I have to tell you? Lilith rolled her eyes. I am curious. Please tell me. Oscar replied, if so, I suppose I can tell you. Matthias nicked Selena Leidendorf. She's called the Mage. Retired 5 years ago. Currently working as a researcher at an ability training institute. Lilith said, surprised Matthias nicked. Seeing her reaction, Oscar sighed and continued. After your father went missing, she remarried without hesitation to Marcus Leidendorf. Lilith lowered her head. I see, remarried. Seeing this, Oscar laughed. That reaction, are you shocked? It seems like she doesn't care whether you're dead or alive, right? Look at her, remarried, had children, living well with another man. You can. Lilith replied coldly, no, I'm not shocked. Oscar asked skeptically, really? Lilith lowered her head and sighed. Yes, mother has her own life too. She's young and talented, so she should live on, doing what she wants. Oscar replied, well, that's true. She was a young and capable mage from a good family. So she married your father, who was the most successful man at the time. However, isn't that too cruel? A husband is one thing, but you are the child she carried and gave birth to. Lilith replied, father took me away and hid me as soon as I was born, right? Mother probably doesn't even know where I am. So how would she know? Oscar chuckled. How naive. Your mother is a mage, a talented young woman, not even 30 years old. How could she retire and work comfortably at a training academy? The place you and your father ran away to, that woman told the emperor in exchange for her retirement. And she got a promise from the emperor that her son wouldn't be conscripted. Do you understand what I mean? She sold out her own daughter for her son. Lilith's eyes widened. So that's how it is. If this is true, in the original story, I was kidnapped, transferred to the training academy after my rank was confirmed, and then locked up. He said my mother is working at the training academy now. So mother knew everything. That whole process, the mother in the original story witnessed everything. That's shocking. Oscar asked, smiling. Now you're shocked, aren't you? Lilith nodded. Yes, a little. Oscar's expression turned serious again. When you arrive at the training academy, come to the magic tower immediately. I'll use this body's authority to get you working in advance. Lilith immediately turned around angrily. Why me? I don't want to. Oscar asked, surprised. Why? Lilith replied, I want to stay at home. Why do I have to go there? Oscar said, aghast. If you don't enter the magic tower, you'll have to go to the battlefield. There's no mercy, even if you're young. Young soldiers have to go subdue those demons with 100 teeth. Lilith retorted, however, I won't go. I don't want to leave, father. Oscar laughed. It's good to have faith. Why does your father tell you not to do anything? He lets you live like a princess who doesn't need to lift a finger. You can't enjoy such luxury without paying the price. Just like how your mother sold you out to protect her son, your father will do the same. Do you think he'll let you live like a princess and not send you to the battlefield? Even your father can't just tell the emperor to go to war on a whim, especially a war of aggression. Your father opposes everything. Yet your father has a daughter, which is good news for the emperor. It would be easy to use you to threaten him, to make him unable to speak up in front of the emperor. Do you want to be your father's weakness, making him unable to speak up in front of the emperor? Is it okay to go and kill innocent people? Lilith thought, as long as I'm not in the top 3 of the class, I won't be forced into the military. That won't happen. I've already prepared a countermeasure. I'm curious about Oscar's intentions in helping me. From the way he speaks, he doesn't seem to like the emperor. So why, in the original story, even when father asked him to help with the revolution, did he stubbornly refuse? When the rebels reached the palace, surprisingly, next to the emperor was the tower master. Oscar just watched the emperor die. The reason Oscar did, that was after I appeared as the final villain. Perhaps Chester tried to kill me instead of my panicked father, and Oscar was the one who stopped Chester then. Oscar, who had never used his own power, strangely coughed up blood and fought Chester. In the end, I think he considered me his enemy because I sided with the villains in the confrontation. So, why did he help me and just watch the emperor die? At that moment, Oscar remarked, relax your face. You'll get wrinkles. Lilith sighed. It's so hard to understand. Oscar asked curiously, what's hard to understand? Lilith hinted the tower master. I can't understand what he's thinking. Oscar pursed his lips, trying to suppress a laugh. Then he burst out laughing. Lilith thought, why is he so nice to me? Does he have feelings for me? Is he the type to blush a little? She noticed with surprise, is he actually blushing a little right now? At that moment, Oscar shrugged. I like geniuses. Lilith, slightly annoyed, realized he was teasing her at this moment. Oscar called out, hey, they're fighting. Lilith looked out the window in surprise. Chester and Leon were grabbing each other's heads and brawling. Lilith ran down in a panic. I have to go there. Oscar's smile disappeared, and he looked down coldly, a faint smile quickly returning. The age gap is truly amusing. His smile softened as he watched Lilith. Mature on the inside, skilled at acting indeed. At that moment, Lilith ran over and shouted, stop. What are you doing? Let go. Let him go. Leon angrily released Chester. Lilith cautiously approached Chester and asked, are you all right? She thought, asterisk, the wounds will be hard to heal. I promised I wouldn't let anyone hit you. But now, asterisk, she asked Leon furiously, why did you hit him? Why? Say something. Why did you hit him? Leon replied, don't be friends with him. I told you not to, because he's a bad person. Lilith asked, surprised, what do you mean? Leon answered excitedly. He stopped mid-sentence, then said to Lilith in a bewildered tone, anyway, just listen to me. Don't play with this villain. I also don't like commoner topics being discussed disrespectfully. Lilith said, astonished, what are you talking about? She thought, asterisk, did I hear that right? Leon actually talked about commoners. Even those who look down on Chester, it shouldn't be Leon. Although he's flamboyant on the outside, isn't he a good older brother who scolds those who curse Chester behind his back? Why is this happening? What's wrong? What did things go wrong? Is it because I saved Chester earlier? No, that's impossible. Asterisk. Then she said, aren't I a commoner? Leon asked, surprised, what? Lilith replied, I think I've been a commoner from birth until now. If I weren't father's daughter, you wouldn't even talk to me. Leon hurriedly explained, hey, it's not like that. Lilith continued, I also had commoner friends when I lived in Janine. Aunt Susan and Uncle Joe were commoners too. Everyone was kind, and I still miss them. I don't make friends based on whether they're nobles. Chester is my friend, so don't hit him or look down on him. Leon trembled with anger. You're closer to him than me. You like him more than me. Lilith thought, that's right, Leon is still immature. I wish he could understand, but I can't force him to. She turned around angrily. I used to like you, but now I'm not so sure because I hate violent people the most in the world. Leon clenched his teeth, trembling, then turned and walked away sullenly. At that moment, Lilith rushed to check on Chester. Are you okay? Does it hurt? Chester patted his clothes and replied, I'm fine. Lilith lowered her head sadly. I'm sorry. This happened so suddenly. After I brought you here, I promised I wouldn't let anyone look down on you. Chester said in a low voice, why are you apologizing to me? He did the right thing. I think he misunderstood what I said. Lilith asked in surprise, what do you mean? Chester replied. He came to me and asked if I was your real friend, and I said no. Lilith asked, puzzled, then what did you say? Chester scratched his head. I said I was a toy. I thought if I said I was your friend, he would hate me. If not a friend, then I'd say I was a toy. I guess he understood my words completely the opposite way. A toy, not a friend, but a toy. I wanted to explain, but he didn't give me a chance. Lilith's eyes widened. Is that how it happened? Chester said, confused. You said strange things, right? I'm sorry. Lilith clutched her head in a panic. No, it's my fault. Okay, promise me. Chester nodded. Okay. When Lilith arrived at Leon's room, it was very noisy. She opened the door and called softly, brother. Their mother said, you two should talk. I'll go out now. Then Lilith approached softly and called, brother. Leon asked, arms crossed, what? Lilith said, I heard why you hit Chester. You were angry because Chester called me a toy, right? Leon replied angrily. That's right. That kid is awful. Who would call someone a toy like that? Lilith explained, you misunderstood. Chester said he was my toy, not that I was his toy. Leon exclaimed in surprise, what? Lilith sighed. Actually, I called Chester a toy. Of course, it was just a joke. I shouldn't have made that kind of joke. Anyway, he said that because he thought calling himself my friend might make you hate him. Leon frowned. That's ridiculous. Why would I hate him? Lilith replied, isn't it because you don't like him? You even glared at him yesterday. Leon hurriedly said, it's not that I don't like him. Maybe it's because you're closer to him. Lilith was very surprised. What? Leon said shyly, if you bring him home and say you want to live with him, that means you really like him, right? I've been trying to get closer to you, but he suddenly appeared. I was angry because it seemed like you liked him more than me. Lilith's eyes widened. I never thought of that. I thought he didn't like him because he was just a commoner. So he was jealous. She stepped closer and said, brother, Chester is my friend, but you're my family. Look at me, okay? I always thought father was my only family. So when I lived in Janine, I envied children with siblings. Then when I came here, I got a brother, right? You're also cool and handsome. Oh, and you're good at catching spiders and you're kind. Lately, I've been very happy. I used to think having father was enough, but having a brother to play with is really great. Your family, always by my side, every day. Even if I have many friends in the future, you'll always be the most important person to me. Leon asked happily, really? Lilith nodded. Yes, really. Let's play a lot together, and then eat delicious food. Leon replied cheerfully, of course. He then asked, but is he better, or am I better? Lilith answered without hesitation, of course you are. Leon pressed his advantage. Then is Theo better, or am I better? Lilith cleverly replied, you're better. Uncle or you? Lilith hesitated. That's a little difficult. Leon burst out laughing. I understand. I'll let you off the hook this time. Father. The next day, Leon sat in a chair and said haughtily, hey, I apologize for hitting you yesterday. I misunderstood you. Violence is bad, so I apologize. Lilith didn't tell me to say this. I'm sincere. Chester replied, it's okay. I said weird things anyway. Leon nodded. Okay, let's talk normally. You forgive me, right? Chester nodded. Yes. Theo, in bed, smiled and said, Leon's way of speaking is a little strange, but he's not a bad kid. Please understand. You said your name is Chester, right? Tao. Please make yourself comfortable, although this isn't my house. Chester thought, where is he injured? Then Leon spoke up. Hey, if you're going to live here from now on, you need to adjust to the rankings. Chester asked, surprised, rankings? Leon said smugly. Lilith said she likes me more than you. Chester froze. What? Leon laughed with satisfaction. Look at your defeated face. She also said she likes me more than Theo. Yes, really. If you don't believe me, you can ask Lilith. Even Uncle couldn't win. How could you think you'd be an exception? So I'm number one. No objections. Okay. Lilith's favorite person. Chester stared blankly. That's the ranking. Theo from the bed spoke up. Hey, Leon, wait a minute. So between you and Chester, who does she like more? Leon answered, laughing. That's not what you asked. Probably third place, right? Haha. Then Chester spoke up. I accept third place. Theo exclaimed in surprise. Huh? You're giving in. How kind. Leon asked, what are you talking about? Idiots. That's for Lilith to decide. Theo asked curiously, what's Lilith doing now? Leon replied, probably in a lecture. Why do you ask? Do you have the confidence to beat me? Theo tried to get out of bed, but felt dizzy. Leon said with concern, hey Theo, are you okay? Theo said shakily, no, then continued, gasping, Is this happening again? Leon shouted, wait, I'll get a servant. Chester also realized that Theo's condition seemed serious. Theo experienced intense pain and couldn't breathe. He collapsed on the floor. Chester was worried and didn't know what to do. He hurriedly grabbed Theo's hand to prevent him from hurting himself.